audio adventures of Warhammer 40k. Attack of Necron.
The Imperium of the far future. Life in the 41st millennium is hard. Ruled by the Emperor of mankind from his golden throne on Terra, humans have spread across the galaxy, inhabiting millions of planets. They have achieved so much, from space travel to robotics, and yet billions live in fear. The universe seems a dangerous place, teeming with alien horrors and dark powers. But it is also a place bristling with adventure and wonder, where battles are won and heroes are forged. Chapter 1. Intruders. Zelia Lore awoke to the sound of buzzing in her cabin. She groaned. What time was it? Her bunk creaked as she turned over, pulling her thick woolen blanket with her. Surely that couldn't be the alarm already. The shrill drone continued, flitting to and fro near the ceiling. Zelia pulled the blanket over her head, but the noise persisted. Throwing back the covers, she peered up into the gloom. That was no alarm. There was something up there, darting back and forth. "Hello?" Zelia called out, her voice croaking from lack of sleep. She'd been up late last night, helping her mum catalogue artefacts in the ship's cargo bay. A series of high-pitched chirps and whistles came from somewhere near the ceiling. Zelia reached out, feeling for the illuminator switch next to her bunk. Glow globes flickered into life, the tiny invader squealing in surprise as it was bathed in sudden light. Zelia frowned as her eyes focused on her flighty visitor. It was a servo sprite, one of the small winged robots that her mother used on board their planet hopper, the Scriptor. The whimsical little things had been created by her mother's assistant, Meki. They had tiny bronze bodies and spindly limbs with probes and data connectors for fingers and toes. Their heads were long, with wide optical beads for eyes that gave the little automata a constant look of surprise. Mesh wings whirred on the robot's back, producing the strident buzz that had woken Zelia. "What are you doing up there?" Zelia asked, rubbing sleep from her eyes. The servo sprite chattered nervously at itself. If Zelia didn't know better, she would have thought that the thing was agitated. But like all the robots her mother used on their expeditions, servo sprites were just machines. Elise Lore was an explorator, a scholar who travelled the length and breadth of the Imperium excavating technology from years gone by, and who often dreamed of digging up artefacts from the dark age of technology. That period thousands of years ago when machines thought for themselves. Those days were long gone. Like so many things in the 41st millennium, artificial intelligence was a heresy, prohibited by order of the Eternal Emperor himself. While Meki's creations sometimes acted as if they were alive, they were just following their programming. They were tools, nothing more. However, something must have spooked the little automaton for it to squeeze through the gap beneath her cabin door. Goose flesh crawled over Zelia's skin. Why would a servo sprite hide? Something was wrong. Swinging her legs off the bunk, Zelia gasped as her bare feet touched the cold metal deck. The floors of the Scriptor were supposed to be heated, but like most of the systems on the ramshackle spaceship, the heating hadn't worked properly for months. The planet hopper was old, very old, and its systems often failed faster than Meki could fix them. But for all its glitches, the Scriptor had been Zelia's home since she was born. She knew every creak of the hull, every bleep of the central cogitator. The low thrum of the engines lulled her to sleep every night. They were a comfort, especially during long journeys across the Imperium, rocketing from one dig to another. It was an odd, topsy-turvy life, helping her mum uncover crashed spaceships or ancient machines on distant worlds all across the galaxy. But Zelia wouldn't have it any other way. But now, the Scriptor didn't feel comforting. It felt uneasy, and Zelia had no idea why. Pulling on her jacket and bandolier, Zelia tapped the Vox stitched into her sleeve. The communicator beeped, opening a channel to the flight deck. "Mum, are you there?" There was no reply. Neither from Mum, nor Lex Mechanic Erasmus, her mother's archaeological partner and an expert in galactic languages, both ancient and alien. There was no point trying to contact Meki. Her mum's young assistant was a whiz with technology, but hardly ever spoke to Zelia, even though they were around the same age. At 12, she was a full year older than Meki was, but they were largely strangers, the Martian boy preferring the company of his machines. Zelia didn't mind. If she was honest, Meki made her a little uncomfortable. He was so intense, with his pale skin and cold grey eyes. Still, he would know what to do with a flustered servo sprite. The robot bumbled around her head as she opened the cabin door. She swatted it away, but it stayed close as she stepped out into the corridor. The passageway was quiet, electro candles spluttering along the creaky walls. The door to her mum's cabin was ajar, and Zelia could see it was empty. For a woman who spent her life cataloguing artefacts, Elise Law was incredibly untidy. Curios from her travels were crammed into nooks and crannies, while towers of textbooks and battered data slates teetered on every available surface. Elise's library was spread throughout the ship, piled high along the narrow gantries. How Mum ever found anything was a mystery, and yet she always seemed to be able to put her finger on any text at a moment's notice. But where was she now? Zelia crept down the corridor, checking Erasmus's cabin, but the elderly scholar was nowhere to be seen. He wasn't in his room or on the mess deck where the Scriptor's crew gathered to eat. Zelia checked the chrono display on her Vox. It was early, barely sunrise. Had Mum and Erasmus gone to the dig already? Zelia jumped at a noise from the back of the ship. Something heavy had been dropped, the deep clang echoing around the planet hopper. It had to have come from the cargo bay, where Elise stored their most valuable discoveries. They had been on this planet, a remote hive world called Targian, for 3 months now, and the hold was brimming with ancient tech. Of course, the noise could just have been Meki checking through the previous day's finds, but somehow she knew it wasn't. Meki was a lot of things, but clumsy wasn't one of them. He would never drop something if he could help it. As the servo sprite fussed around her head, Zelia picked up a heavy-looking ladle that Elise had used to slop Grok's stew into their bowls the night before. It wasn't much of a defence, but it would have to do. Zelia inched towards the cargo bay, praying that she'd find Meki on the other side of the hold's heavy doors. She paused, listening through the thick metal. There was a flurry of movement on the other side of the door, the scrape of leather against deck plates, and then silence. Trying to ignore the increasingly frantic buzzing of the servo sprite, Zelia stepped forwards, and the doors wheezed open. "Hello? Meki, are you in here?" There was no answer. The cargo bay was silent, the lights kept permanently low to protect the more valuable artifacts. She crept through the collection, tall cabinets on either side. Something moved ahead. Her grip tightened on the ladle. "Meki? Seriously, this isn't funny." A boot crunched behind her. Zelia whirled round, swinging the ladle. "You need to be careful," a gruff voice said. "You could hurt someone with that." Zelia cried out as thick fingers caught her wrist. They squeezed, and the metal spoon clattered to the floor. "That's better." A stranger loomed over her, muscles bunched beneath a scruffy vest festooned with brightly coloured patches. His hair was styled into a lurid green mohawk, a tattoo of a large red cat leaping over his left ear. It was a Runak, a ferocious scavenger native to Targian with jagged scales instead of fur. Zelia had only seen the creatures out on the plains, but imagined they smelled better than the thug who was threatening her in her own home. "Let go of me!" Zelia cried out, trying to pull away. "I don't think so, ladle girl," the tattooed thug leered before calling over his shoulder. "You can come out, it's only a little brat." Brat? The thug must only have been a year or two older than Zelia. He was strong, though. There was no way of breaking his grip. More strangers slipped out of the shadow. 2 boys and a girl with spiked purple hair and a glowing eye implant. They all wore similar patches on their jackets, obviously members of the same gang. "What do you want?" Zelia squeaked, and her captor smiled, showing uneven, stained teeth. "That's a good question." The thug glanced around, his small, cruel eyes scanning the rusting relics on the shelves. "We thought this place would be full of treasure, didn't we, Talon?" The ganger behind him nodded. This one wasn't as big, but still looked like he could handle himself in a fight. His blonde hair was cropped short at the sides, and a small scar ran through one of his thick, dark eyebrows. He held no weapons in his gloved hands, but Zelia couldn't help but notice the snub-nosed beamer hanging next to the leather pouch on his belt. "That's what you told us, Riz, but it looks like a load of old junk to me." "Yeah, old junk," Riz parroted, pulling Zelia closer. "Where's the real booty? Where have you stashed it?" "This is all we have," Zelia told him, glancing down at the hefty weapon Riz held in his free hand. The ganger had fashioned a mace out of a long girder topped with a blunt slab of corroded metal. "You like my spud, Jack, huh?" Riz said, brandishing the makeshift weapon. "I call her Splitter. Do you want to know why?" "I think I can guess," Zelia replied. "'Cause I split skulls with her," he said anyway, as if she were the idiot, not him. "Ain't that right, Talon?" The blonde-haired Juve shifted uncomfortably, glancing nervously at the cargo bay doors. "We should go, Riz. There's nothing here." Riz glared at the younger kid. "Oi, I give the orders, not you." "Then order us to get out of here. We're wasting our time." Riz swung around, nearly pulling Zelia off her feet. "I'll waste you in a minute," he growled, brandishing Splitter menacingly. Zelia saw her chance and took it. She lashed out with her foot, kicking Riz's shin. "Ow!" he yelped, spinning her around so she crashed into the nearest cabinet, cogs and gears tumbling all around her. Zelia snatched a length of metal piping from the floor, but a swipe of the spudjacker sent it flying across the cargo bay. "Nice try," Riz sneered above her, "but I'm not going to ask you again. Where's the valuable stuff? Where are you hiding it?" "I told you," she shouted back, gripping her aching fingers. "This is all there is." "Liar!" Riz bellowed, raising the spudjacker high above his head. "Splitter hates liars, and so do I." With a feral roar, he brought the mace crashing down. Chapter 2. The Runak Warriors. "No!" Talon yelled, barging into Riz and throwing off the larger ganger's aim. Splitter smashed harmlessly into the deck. "What do you think you're doing?" Riz thundered, swinging the spudjacker at Talon. The blonde-haired boy leapt back, the club narrowly missing him. The next time, he wasn't so lucky. Riz lashed out again with the mace, catching Talon in the side. The boy crashed into a cabinet, the air knocked out of him. "Leave him alone!" Zelia yelled. "Stay out of this, girl!" Riz sneered as the rest of the gang stepped back, too scared to interfere. "He's gone too far this time." He loomed over Talon, the spudjacker held high. Zelia looked up. The servo sprite was still buzzing around the ceiling. She tapped the box on her sleeve, activating a channel to the ship's central cogitator. "Danger in cargo bay!" she shouted. "Protect the artifacts!" "Aye," Riz said, his spudjacker frozen in midair. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You'll see," said Zelia with a smile, as every servo sprite Meki had ever constructed swarmed on the cargo and descended on the gangers. "Whoa!" Riz screamed as dozens of tiny robots jabbed at him with needle-sharp data connectors. "Get him off me!" He tried to swat them away with Splitter, but only lost his balance, crashing to the floor. The other gangers ran into each other as they were mobbed by the servo swarm. Even Talon was forced to throw up his arms to protect himself. But Zelia saw him grin at her before yelling at the others, "Let's get out of here!" They all ran, Riz included, still swiping at the servo sprites that yanked painfully at his mohawk. Zelia jumped to her feet as soon as they were gone. She ran to the cogitator terminal next to the doors, activating the ship's pict feed. Images scrolled over the display, displaying pict casts from every corner of the ship. She scrolled through to the external feeds and watched the gang members charge down the Scriptor's ramp, servo sprites dive-bombing the would-be raiders like fire wasps. As soon as they were clear, she pressed a button and the ramp swung up to slam shut. Suddenly exhausted, Zelia slumped forward, leaning heavily against the terminal. Her legs were like jelly, her breath ragged. She tapped her box. "Mum, are you there? Mum?" Elise still didn't answer. That settled it. If her mum wasn't on the ship and wasn't answering her box, then there was only one place she could be. "Ouch!" cried Talon as one of the small flying robots jabbed the back of his neck. "You wanted us off the ship? We're off the ship!" The automaton chattered angrily in return, and Talon couldn't help but smile. Ladle Girl had done good. It took a lot to take on the Runak warriors, but she had sent them packing. Their job done, the Servo Sprites flocked back to the funny little ship, disappearing into a porthole. "Let's get back underground!" Talon shouted. But Riz wasn't happy. "You don't tell me what to do, Talon. Not now, not ever. We're going back onto that ship to teach that runt a lesson she'll never forget." The others didn't move, looking from Riz to Talon, not sure who to follow. Talon's hand dropped down to his beamer. Riz snorted. "You going to blast me, Talon? Is that it? It's funny. In all the years you've had that clip to your belt, I've never seen you use it. You haven't got the guts. You're a coward, guard boy. Always have been, always will be." Talon didn't have a chance to respond to the jibe. A cry echoed across the vast landing bay, and he turned to see a soldier of the Astra Militarum making straight for them through the clustered space cruisers. He was wearing the Imperial Guard standard khaki green uniform, a long shock stick gripped in his gloved hand, capable of delivering a charge that could stop a full-grown Grox in its tracks. "Hey!" the guardsman shouted. "What are you tunnel rats doing up here?" Riz cursed, shooting one last venomous look at the planet hopper before yelling, "Scatter!" The warriors did as they were told, Talon included. He ducked behind a stack of crates, heading for a bolt hole at the far end of the spaceport. He didn't bother looking back for the others. At times like this, it was every ganger for themselves, especially where Riz was concerned. Talon dropped to the ground at the first sound of lasfire, sliding towards a service hatch. He lifted the heavy lid to reveal a ladder. It led down to a tunnel, part of the ventilation system that pumped recycled air around the hive. He started clambering down, glancing up to see Essa lying on the floor. The purple-haired girl was out cold, stunned by the guardsman's shock stick. Talon swore beneath his breath. This wouldn't go well for them back at camp. And all for a planet hopper filled with old junk. Typical Riz. He started to climb down, stopping only at the sound of a spluttering grav bike. It was the girl from the planet hopper, weaving in and out of the other ships in the spaceport. "Where are you going?" he wondered aloud, before a fresh barrage of lasfire sent him hurrying down the ladder. The Runak warriors were just one of the many gangs that inhabited the tunnels and sewers beneath Ral Rata, the largest of Targian's many hive cities. They operated out of a long-forgotten storm drain, their camp in little danger of being flooded on a planet that hadn't seen a single drop of rain for decades. The gang had been Talon's surrogate family ever since he'd run away from home 3 years ago. They were an untrustworthy bunch of thieves and cutthroats, but had taken him in when he needed it most. That didn't mean he was going to cover himself in ganger tattoos like Riz. He wasn't stupid. Talon wore a Runak patch on his vest to show his allegiance, and that was good enough for him. Something about tattoos made his skin crawl. He remembered his brother proudly showing off his Aquila tattoo the day he joined the Imperial Guard. "What do you think, Tally?" Carl had asked. The skin around the official sigil of the Imperium was red raw, the two-headed eagle forever branded into his brother's arm. "Looks great," he'd lied, even though it made him feel sick, and Carl had ruffled his hair. "You'll have one of your own one day," Carl promised him. Not likely, Talon had thought. Everyone was so sure that Talon was going to follow in Carl's footsteps. It was a family tradition, after all. Their father, Tyrion Stormweaver, had trained generations of Imperial Guardsmen. It was only natural that his sons would go into the service. "It's your duty, boy," he would growl at his younger son. "It'll make a man of you. Throne knows something has to." Talon wondered what his dad would think of him now. His son, the tunnel rat. The Runak camp was unnaturally quiet when Talon clambered into the drain. He sighed. This could only mean one thing. Everyone had already gathered in Onak's great hall. Riz would have already taken centre stage, telling their leader what had happened, or at least his side of the story. What was the betting that Talon was getting blamed for Essa's capture? In reality, the so-called Great Hall was a burned-out troop carrier. Talon had no idea how it had got down here. Legend said that Onak's father had stripped the transport down piece by piece and floated it through the sewers. It had been rebuilt in pride of place at the centre of the drain, the other shacks and tents clustered around its blackened hull. By all accounts, Onak's father had been a force to be reckoned with, a legacy his daughter traded on to this day. She was as lazy as he had been brave, but the rest of the gang worshipped the ground she slouched on, especially when she had a stub cannon in hand. She was playing with the weapon now as she lounged on her throne, another relic of her father's reign, fashioned from a gunship ejector seat. The rest of the warriors huddled around the walls, listening to Riz, who was gesturing wildly with his spudjacker in the middle of the great hall. "It's all Talon's fault," he claimed. "You should have seen the treasures inside that ship. They were worth a fortune. But Talon attacked me before I could take what was rightfully mine." "Mine?" Onak drawled, raising a pierced eyebrow. Riz bowed low to cover his mistake. "Yours, leader." "He's a liar!" Every face turned to watch Talon as he strode into the assembly. "There was nothing worth stealing on that crate, just a load of broken machines." "Then why did you attack me?" Riz spat back. "A good question," Onak agreed from her throne. "Because our brave champion was about to flatten an unarmed girl." Riz growled. "She deserved it." "Why? Because she kicked you in the shin?" Talon stuck out his bottom lip. "Poor baby." "Is that what happens, champion?" Onak asked, barely disguising the disdain in her voice. Riz whirled around to face the throne. "She had robots," he lied, desperate to save face. "Huge, hulking robots, armed to their metallic teeth." Talon laughed out loud. "You're kidding! Is that really what you're going with?" Talon turned to address their leader. "Oh, Riz is a champion, all right. A champion of barefaced lies." "There were robots, but they were barely bigger than my hand." Riz's face had gone as red as his tattoo. "There were hundreds of them." 3, maybe 4 dozen, Talon countered. "They were annoying, but hardly dangerous." "Says the one who told us to run." "Only because we were wasting our time. You said there was treasure on the ship, but it was a load of rubbish, just like you." "What?" Riz bellowed. "And now Essa is in the guardhouse. Because of Riz, not me." Talon jutted out his jaw. "He doesn't deserve to be our champion." "Take that back," Riz spat, brandishing his spudjacker, "or I'll show you how Splitter got her name." Talon held his ground. "I'd like to see you try." "You're not the only one," Onak said, licking her lips as she sat up in her chair. "Your honour has been questioned, champion. What are you going to do about it?" "I'll kill him!" Riz roared, charging at Talon. A cheer went up from the assembled throng, the warriors always ready to watch a good scrap, but Talon was ready for his opponent. He snatched his beamer from its holster and aimed it straight at Riz. The champion swung Splitter in an arc, easily knocking the beamer from Talon's grip, just as he'd been expecting. Talon shoulder-barged Riz, knocking the champion off his feet. Riz landed on his face, Splitter thudding to the floor. Talon dropped on his rival, fists flying. The reason Riz had never seen Talon use the beamer was that it didn't work. Talon had stolen it from his dad's barracks on the day he'd run away from home. It was a family heirloom, an antique passed down from one generation to the next. It had always been for show, unlike his fists. Talon was a brawler, whereas Riz was nothing more than a bully. The so-called champion had managed to fool Onak for years, but not anymore. Talon would show the entire gang how much of a coward their champion actually was. He pummeled Riz. But the champion managed to kick up with his boot, catching Talon in the chest. Talon stumbled into the baying crowd and was immediately shoved back towards Riz by at least 3 overexcited onlookers. That was exactly what he wanted. He pretended to tumble forward, dropping into a roll that led him straight to Splitter. He jumped up, the Spudjacker now in his hands, and swiped at Riz. The champion threw himself out of the way to avoid getting clobbered by his own weapon and lost balance, landing awkwardly at Onak's feet. Talon brought the Spudjacker down inches from Riz's head. A gasp went up around the Great Hall. But Talon had no intention of striking the champion. He just wanted Riz to beg for his life. Anything to show his true colours. "Do you submit?" he yelled at the champion as he brought the Spudjacker down on the other side of Riz's head. "Do you give in?" He lifted the weapon for a third and final strike, and Riz looked up, grinning horribly. "Backlash!" the champion shouted. Electricity crackled from a power cell hidden in the Spudjacker's shaft. The energy surged into Talon's body, every muscle cramping. With a strangled cry, he crumpled to the floor, dropping the weapon. All around them, the warriors were chanting Riz's name, urging their champion to finish the job. Grinning with triumph, Riz recovered his Spudjacker and held it high above his head like a trophy, bellowing in triumph. With his name ringing in everyone's ears, he turned to Talon and lifted the bulky weapon for the final time, ready to deliver a killer blow. "And this," Riz snarled, spit flying from his lips, "is why I am champion and you are nothing." Chapter 3. The Siren. A siren blared through the Great Hall. Even Riz looked around in surprise, forgetting that he was about to flatten his rival once and for all. "What's that?" he asked as Onak rose to her feet. "I don't believe it," the leader said. "It can't be." "Can't be what?" Talon stammered, still barely able to move. He'd heard plenty of alarms in his time, mainly from breaking into the hive's many manufactoria and foundries, but nothing like this. If the other alerts were like the annoying buzzing of flies, this one was like the roar of a lion, so loud, so urgent. "Onak," Riz said, turning to their leader. The colour had drained beneath the tattoos that smothered her face. "I haven't heard that for years," she stammered in reply. "And even then, it was a false alarm." "Well, what does it mean?" Talon asked, struggling back to his feet. Onak met his confused gaze, and Talon saw real fear in her eyes. "Invasion," she said bluntly. "The hive is under attack." Zelia loved getting out of the hive. She had never been one for cities, especially the gigantic towers of the hive worlds, rising like jagged spikes from blighted landscapes all across the Imperium. Nothing about them was natural, from the rich living in luxury in the cloud-drenched spires to the poor scraping an unbearable existence in the squalid depths of the Undercity. She hated the stink of recycled air, and never feeling the heat of the sun against her skin. She had spent so much of her life outdoors, braving the elements on dozens of worlds across the Imperium. Out here, she felt alive. Out here, she felt free. Zelia glanced back at Ral Rata, rising high into the sky behind her. A siren blared out of the hive. What was that? It took 20 minutes or so to reach the dig, her grav bike spluttering as it skimmed over the wasteland. Her mum had set up camp in the shadow of ancient dust-blasted ruins. Dome-shaped tents huddled together, surrounded by crates ready to be transported back to the scriptor. Her mum's skimmer sat near the largest tent, but there was no sign of Elise and the others. Zelia pulled on her brakes, expecting the bike to slow. Instead, its decrepit anti-grav generator backfired, smoke billowing from the suspensors. Zelia cried out as the bike dipped, its nose striking the ground. She was thrown from her seat as the bike pinwheeled through the air. Bike and rider crashed into the dirt at the same time, sending up a plume of dust. "Zelia!" Elise Lore raced from the main tent, making straight for her daughter. "Are you all right?" There was no mistaking that Zelia and Elise were related. They had the same dark skin and mops of unmanageable black hair piled high on their heads. A pale-skinned boy barreled out of the tent behind Elise. "What have you done?" he demanded as he raced over to the smoking grav bike. "No, that's fine, Mecky," Zelia muttered as Elise helped her up. "You just worry about the bike. It's not like I nearly broke my neck or anything." Elise's assistant was already examining the downed vehicle, completely oblivious to Zelia's sarcasm. He was tall and lanky, his long limbs draped in the flowing red robes of his people. Like all Martians, he had a natural affinity for machines and was always tinkering with the archaeotech unearthed by Elise's digs. According to Lex Mechanic Erasmus, the people of Mars worshipped technology itself and communicated with the spirits they believed inhabited all machines. Zelia wasn't sure if she believed in the existence of machine spirits herself, but knew that Meki preferred the company of gadgets and gizmos to other humans. He even looked a bit like a machine, thanks to the exoframe that helped him move his withered right arm. Meki had apparently built the bionic cuff himself when he was only 3 years old. As she watched, he pulled open a panel to access the bike's engine and flicked down a number of the magnifying lenses he wore on a band around his head. He went straight to work, assisted by a pair of servo sprites that fetched tools for him from the large pack he wore on his back. "Are you here because of the siren?" Elise asked, checking her daughter for injuries. "No," Zelia said, wincing as her mum brushed a graze on her cheek. "Although that is freaky." "Then what are you doing out of bed? I thought you deserved a lie-in after working so hard last night." Zelia told her about the break-in and the gangers in the hold, and Elise's eyes went wide. "What?" She turned and stomped into the main dome, Zelia limping slightly as she tried to keep up. A silver-haired man was hunched over an antique Vox in the corner of the tent, twisting knobs on the side of the dented unit as he tried to find a signal. "Erasmus," Elise began, her anger barely in check. "Did you lock the hatch when we left this morning?" The man looked up in puzzlement. "Hatch?" "On the Scriptor, Zelia was attacked by gangers in her own cargo bay." Erasmus got up from the box and hurried over. "By the Emperor, are you all right, my dear?" "She's fine," Elise snapped, answering for Zelia. "But you have to be more careful. You know how dangerous the hive can be." The Lex mechanic scratched his cheek, stubble rasping against his fingers. "I truly am sorry. I just wanted to get to the dig." He looked up, distracted by the siren that was still wailing across the wastelands. "I don't like that," he stammered, pointing in the direction of the hive. "Not one bit." He scuttled back to the Vox and grabbed a headset, pressing a Voxcaster to his ear. "I'm trying to find out what's happening back there, but there's a lot of chatter." His face suddenly went as white as his thinning hair. "Erasmus?" Elise asked. He leapt up from the Vox without explaining. "We need to get everything back to the Scriptor, now!" "Why?" Elise asked, following Erasmus outside. "Oh no," he whimpered. "It's already begun." Zelia shielded her eyes against the sun. There were dots on the horizon, moving in quickly. Frowning, she pulled her omniscope from her bandolier and peered through the lens. "They're ships," she said, as the dots swam into focus. "What kind of ships?" Elise asked. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like them." That was true enough. The ships were shaped like crescents, their dark green wings curling forward like the jaws of a nighthawk beetle. Strange sigils glowed green across the ship's sides, as did the cannons that jutted out beneath the cockpits. They were moving at speed, the unnatural howl of their engines competing with the blare of the siren. Zelia tried to zoom in on the nearest fighter. It looked like there was a pilot sitting in the open cockpit, but she couldn't quite make it out. "Identification?" she asked out loud. "Unknown," the scope's inbuilt cogitator replied in a clipped version of her mum's voice. "Let me see," Erasmus said, snatching the scope from her hands. "Hey, careful!" The omniscope had been a present from Elise. Her mum had dug it up on Mania 4 and had Meki fix the ancient cogitator using her own voice print as a joke. "You can finally order me around, Zelia, if you dare." No one was laughing now. Erasmus let out a whimper as he adjusted the scope, seeing the bizarre craft for himself. "What are they, Erasmus?" Elise asked. "Don't you recognize the sound?" he said, shoving the scope into Elise's hands and rushing back into the tent. "No," Elise said, shaking her head as she looked through the device. "That's not possible. They're extinct." "Extinct?" Zelia asked. "That's what we thought," Erasmus shouted from inside the dome. "But what if we were wrong?" "Mum," Zelia asked, her voice wavering, "what are they?" Elise crouched down in front of Zelia and gave her the scope. "You'll need to be brave, sweetheart. Really brave. We all will." "You're scaring me, Mum." "I'm scared too, baby, and for good reason." Behind her, the first wave of fighters had already reached the hive. How had they moved so fast? The strange craft opened fire, their cannons spitting bolts of emerald energy. "They're called the Necrons," Elise said, "and they won't rest until they've destroyed every living thing on this planet." Chapter 4. The Necrons. The strange green energy punched deep into the hive, fire blossoming wherever it struck. It was more like lightning than lasfire, crackling from the Necron cannons. But the invaders weren't just targeting the city. More of the emerald beams were carving deep canyons into the ground beyond the hive, a fog of dust and rubble clouding the horizon. "Grab as much as you can," Elise said, making for the tent. "Meki, how's that grab bike looking?" The Martian boy shook his head. "The motivators are fused. It's going to take time to repair." "We haven't time," Erasmus said, charging out of the tent, his arms brimming with artifacts. Elise grabbed one of the containers stacked beside the dome. "We can use my skimmer. Zelia, take this." She passed the heavy container to Zelia, who struggled over to the hover sled. Before long, the skimmer was piled high with artifacts. "We won't be able to take much more, Mum," Zelia said, as Elise appeared with even more relics. "We should go," Erasmus agreed, slinging a leather satchel over his shoulder. Elise hesitated, looking back at the containers still scattered around the camp. "You're probably right, but the specimens—" "There will be other digs, Elise," the Lex mechanic told her, clambering into the skimmer. "We've already waited too long." The ground shook and Zelia stumbled. That had been the third earth tremor in as many minutes. Elise leapt onto the skimmer. "Zelia, Meki, get on!" Zelia was about to follow her mum onto the craft when she spotted something in the distance. The ground between them and the hive was changing colour, a dark stain sweeping out across the plain. She opened the scope and zoomed in, letting out a gasp. A vast swarm of metallic insects were scurrying towards them on sharp, multi-jointed legs. "And lo, the Necron scarabs throng," an ashen-faced Erasmus muttered from the back of the skimmer, "devouring everything in sight." "Not helpful, Erasmus," Elise said, reaching a hand down to help Zelia onto the hover sled. "What's he talking about?" Zelia asked, climbing on board. "It's nothing," Elise said, but Zelia could tell she was lying. "Just a fragment of text from the Rakosan scrolls." Her eyes went wide. "Oh no." "What?" Elise jumped from the skimmer and ran back to the main dome. "I forgot my data slate. It has all my notes. Start her up, Zelia." Zelia shuffled over to the driver's seat and started the engine. The skimmer's anti-grav generators whirred, and the hover sled rose unsteadily into the air to hang a metre from the ground. "Mum, come on!" she yelled across the camp. "What is that?" Meki asked, pointing from where he had positioned himself among the tech. Zelia followed his gaze to see hover chariots racing towards them. Each looked like a floating green throne, armed to the teeth with powerful cannons. Metallic figures were hunched over the controls, looking for all the world like mechanical skeletons. "Are those robots?" Zelia asked. "No," Erasmus replied. "Those are the Necrons. They're alive, in a manner of speaking." "But artificial intelligence is prohibited," Meki said. "There's nothing artificial about it," the Lex mechanic replied, before glancing back at the tent. "Where is Elise?" Zelia's mum darted out of the dome, a data slate clasped in her hand. "Sorry, I couldn't leave this behind. The nearest Necron fired, green lightning lancing across the camp to slam into the ancient ruin. Fragments of rock flew everywhere, the shockwave knocking Elise from her feet. "Mum!" Elise scrambled up and vaulted into the seat beside Zelia. "I'm all right. Go, go!" Zelia opened the throttle, expecting the skimmer to shoot forwards. It didn't move. She stamped on the accelerator, but it still didn't respond. "Meki!" Elise yelled. "What's wrong with it?" The Martian leaped from the skimmer and peered into the engine, lenses flicking down in front of his eyes. "There is no power to the forward thrusters," he reported, his voice unwavering. "I can fix it." "Then make it quick!" Erasmus snapped. A blast of Necron energy atomized the main tent. Fragments of canvas settled all around like burning flakes of snow. The Necrons were almost upon them. Their faces were like steel skulls, green eyes glowing malevolently beneath scowling brows. Another bolt of luminous energy crackled towards them, heading straight for the skimmer. "Everyone out!" Zelia screamed. But it was already too late. Chapter 5. Space Marines. The lightning never found its target. A huge teardrop-shaped pod crashed down in front of them, blocking the Necron energy with its riveted metal sides. Heavy ramps slammed down, sending up a fresh cloud of dust. Zelia coughed, unable to see, but there was no mistaking the heavy stomp of boots or the clanking of battle-ravaged armour. Zelia had never seen one up close, but knew exactly who the arrivals were. Everyone did. They were living legends, sworn protectors of humanity against the horrors of the universe. They were war made flesh. They were Space Marines. The dust settled, and Zelia found herself looking up at an armoured giant almost 3 times her height, its imposing helm staring right at her. "Get away from here," the Space Marine rumbled in a voice so deep that she could feel it in her bones. "Now." She could barely move, let alone respond. She had seen pictures of the Ultramarines, the blue armour familiar from hundreds of tattered tapestries and stained glass viewports, but to see one face to face, that was both an honour and a curse. Those who found themselves on the battlegrounds of the Adeptus Astartes very rarely survived to tell the tale. As she gaped, the Space Marine joined his brothers, charging into battle, his whirring chainsword held high. He brought the mighty weapon down, slicing straight through the nearest Necron battle skimmer. The alien's cannon exploded in a blaze of green light. By the time the glare faded, the Space Marine had already moved on to its next target, along with the rest of his squad. "Meki!" Elise yelled down at the Martian. "Any time soon would be good." "Working on it," the Martian boy said, up to his elbows in cables. Zelia looked to where the scarabs had reached her abandoned anti-grav bite. The metal insect scuttled over its chassis, jaws chattering. 1 minute the grav bite was there, and the next it had gone. The scarabs had dismantled it in seconds, devouring every single part. Now she understood what the old scroll had meant. Worst of all, they'd be next if they didn't get the skimmer moving. "Meki!" "Yes," the Martian snapped back. "I know." Zelia peered over the side. Meki's right hand was pressed against a circuit board, the tiny haptic implants on his fingertips plugging into the skimmer's cogitator. His eyes were closed, his lips moving as if in prayer as the strange metal strips he called his electus glowed eerily on his arms and head. With a rattle, the skimmer shook. Meki disengaged his fingers and opened his eyes, looking straight at her. "Try it now, Zelia Law." She revved the engine, and the skimmer jolted forwards. "You did it!" Elise cheered, helping Meki onto the back of the skimmer. "Of course," he said plainly, his servo sprites dropping onto his shoulders. There was no arrogance in his voice. It was merely a statement of fact. Zelia opened the throttle and the skimmer shot forwards. She weaved the craft through the battling Space Marines, avoiding both Necron lightning and Space Marine artillery. "Get us back to the script hall," Elise shouted. "We're getting off this planet." By the look of it, they weren't the only ones. The hive was still under attack, much of the gigantic spike ablaze, and ships of all sizes were blasting off from the spaceport located halfway up the towering structure. The evacuation of Targian had begun. A Necron scarab leapt up onto the front of the skimmer and sank its pointed teeth into the metal. "Oh no you don't," cried Elise, grabbing an ancient generator coil from a crate of artifacts. She lobbed the artifact at the scarab, knocking the one-eyed bug from the skimmer. The paint had blistered where it had plunged its fangs into the metalwork, smoke curling from 2 perfectly round holes. Another scarab appeared beside Zelia. She cried out in alarm and knocked it from the side of the skimmer before it could take a bite. The hover sled lurched to the right as she took her eyes from the controls. She straightened up, but could hear the scamper of tiny legs on the bottom of the chassis. "We're going to be smothered by those things in a minute," she yelled. Meki tapped the screen he kept cuffed to his left wrist. "Go up," he told her. "What do you mean?" "What I said. Fly." She twisted in her seat. "Meki, what are you talking about? This is a skimmer, not an aircraft." The ghost of a smile played over his pale lips. "Not anymore. I gave the anti-grav generator ideas above its station. Look." Leaning across, he grabbed the controls. "Hey!" Meki pulled back sharply on the steering wheel, and the skimmer soared into the sky. Unwilling to give up on their prize, some of the scarabs took to the air, razor-sharp wings sprouting from their glistening exoskeletons, but the skimmer was moving too fast, even for them. Zelia laughed out loud. Meki was a bit weird, but he was also brilliant. "We will not be able to stay up here for long," he told her gravely, "but the power cell should last until we get back to the scriptor." The skimmer suddenly dipped, dropping like a stone, before levelling out again. "You sure about that?" she gasped. "It's not the skimmer," Erasmus cried out as the Necron crawled onto the back of the hover sled. The gruesome skeleton grabbed Erasmus's satchel strap and pulled, trying to yank the Lex mechanic out of the skimmer. "Help me!" Meki leant over, attempting to pry the alien's fingers from the bag while the servo sprites dive-bombed the skull-faced attacker. "It won't let go!" Erasmus wailed. "Hang on," Zelia said. She had problems of her own. One of the crescent-shaped fighters had spotted them and was swooping down to intercept. Zelia swerved as the gunship fired, the crackling energy missing them by inches. The Necron fighter threw itself into a tight turn, coming around for a fresh attack. Zelia gunned the engine, but would never be able to outrun the alien ship. Its Necron pilot locked onto her and prepared to fire, before exploding into a ball of flaming shrapnel. Zelia looked up to see an Aquila shining bright on the nose of a thundering blue aircraft. Bristling with missile launchers and plasma cannons, the heavily armoured fighter was chunky and compact. They looked far too heavy for its hooked wings, each emblazoned with the silver U-shaped insignia that the Ultramarines wore on their shoulder pads. And yet, despite its obvious heft, the gunship turned and twisted in the air with ease, the Space Marine at the controls already targeting another Necron ship. Behind her, Erasmus screamed. The Necron nearly had him out of the skimmer. "Just let go of the bag," Elise shouted. "No," Erasmus said. "I can't." Zelia looked up and saw the Space Marine throw his gunship into a barrel roll, corkscrewing through the air. Suddenly, she knew what to do. "Hold on to something," she barked. "Why?" Elise asked. "Just do it!" Zelia jerked the controls to the right. The skimmer went into a spin, its cargo of ancient artifacts spraying out like sparks from the whirling firecrackers that her mother launched each and every Ascension day. The relics tumbled to the ground, where they were instantly devoured by the sea of scarabs below. Meki grabbed hold of Erasmus as the Necron lost its grip and plunged to the ground with them. Wrestling with the controls, Zelia levelled out the now empty skimmer. "Is everyone all right?" "Yes," Erasmus stammered. "Thanks to you." "Sorry about your artifacts, Mum." Elise squeezed her daughter's arm. "Are you kidding? That was incredible." "All thanks to Meki's tinkering," she said, glancing back at the Martian. He was sitting looking straight ahead. Were those tears in his eyes? Then she realised why. Only one of the servo sprites was clinging to his robes. The other must have gone down with the Necron. Zelia faced front, staring through the skimmer's Plastech windscreen. There wasn't time to grieve for a robot, no matter how attached Meki was to his creations. They needed to get back to the scriptor before another Necron tried to bring them down. She had only just managed to pull off that manoeuvre without losing control. Next time, she might not be so lucky. Chapter 6. Into Battle. Talon felt as if he knew every inch of the tunnels beneath Ralrata. That was impossible, of course. The world beneath the city was nearly as big as the one above, but it had been his home for the last 3 years. He had fallen in with the Runak warriors within weeks of running away from home. It was impossible to survive in the Underhive without joining a gang. He didn't like everything about the warriors, Riz included, but they'd kept him safe. Up to now. "Keep moving," Riz hissed behind him. They were scrambling along a ventilation shaft on their hands and knees, splashing through Throne knew what. Talon had never been so glad for the pads he wore around his knees. He didn't want to think what lurked in the stagnant water that pooled in the pipes which snaked through the hive at all levels. "What do you think I'm doing?" he snapped back, tempted to slip and accidentally boot Riz in his stupid tattooed face. There was another explosion above them. Dust tumbled from cracks in the pipe. They had travelled back up to the middle section of the tower using an abandoned maintenance lift that the warriors used to reach the spaceport, and with it the rich pickings of the starfarers who used the dock. Up here, the noise of battle was louder than ever. "Who do you think it is?" Riz stammered. His voice was smaller than usual. Talon didn't hesitate with his reply. "Xenos." "Aliens?" Riz squeaked. "Are you sure?" "What else would it be?" Talon had heard about aliens all his life. His dad didn't believe in telling kids fairy stories. "They need to know what the universe is really like," the old soldier used to tell Talon's long-suffering mum. Talon and Carl went to bed every night with horror stories ringing in their ears. Tales of greenskins and Tyranids, Eldar and Tau. Major Tyrion Stormweaver didn't skimp on the details. He wanted his sons to be terrified of anything that wasn't human. He wanted them ready to fight. "Aliens are scum, boys. Never forget that. You can't trust them. They certainly don't trust us. They live only to destroy, to corrupt. That's why I joined the Imperial Guard, as did my father before me. That's why you'll join too. It's the duty of every Stormweaver to take up arms against the Xenos threat." They came to a T-junction in the shaft. "Go left," Riz told him. "Not likely," Talon replied, heading right. "That leads to the barracks." "So, there'll be weapons there." "Yeah, and they'll be fighting too. The invaders are bound to target the guardhouse first." Talon's chest tightened. Would his dad be there, facing the enemy, lasgun in hand? "Besides, you've got Splitter, haven't you?" Riz's spudjacker was strapped to the champion's back and had been scraping along the pipe ever since they broke camp. They came to a ladder, which headed up to a maintenance hatch. The hinges squealed as Talon opened it, but no one came to investigate. The Ryle Rattans had bigger concerns than a couple of gangers. They emerged in a dingy back alley near Spaceport Market on the middle level. Onak's orders had been clear. "It'll be chaos up top. Grab whatever you can. Food, supplies, weapons, and get back down here. We'll be safe in the camp." Talon didn't believe that for a minute, but knew what happened if you disobeyed Onak. She had been right about one thing, though. The streets were in chaos. The rattle of autocannons was everywhere, accompanied by screams and the concussive blasts of frag grenades. "Come on," said Riz, drawing Splitter and barging past Talon. "I don't want to be up here for long." Riz stalked out of the alley and crossed the usually busy thoroughfare. The market had been abandoned, most of the stalls already looted by rival gangs. The market catered mainly for the spaceport and the manufactoria of the middle levels, a heady mix of off-worlders and local labourers. The place reeked of oil and sweat, an unnatural fog hanging in the air. Riz's spudjacker smashed against the metal shutters of a workshop on the other side of the street. Talon rushed over to him. "What are you doing?" "This is old Hinkin's place, you know, the toolsmith. I saw him fixing an old las cutter the other day, but he's left it behind. You can do some serious damage with a las cutter." A blast ripped around the corner of the street, scattering debris across the road. "What was that?" Riz said, forgetting all about his prize. His answer came as 3 guardsmen backed across the end of the street, firing at an unseen enemy. Talon grabbed Riz's arm. "We need to go." Green energy lanced through the air and the soldiers were turned to dust. Riz froze where he stood, still gripping Splitter, terrified out of his wits. Talon went to leave him, but then stopped himself. Riz was a pain in the nether regions, but he didn't deserve to end up like those guardsmen. He ran back and pulled Riz towards the maintenance hatch. "Come on!" Another explosion knocked them both off their feet. Talon hit the ground hard, only narrowly avoiding being crushed by Splitter, which clattered to the floor beside him. He looked up, ears ringing, and saw 3 figures stalking through the dust and smoke. They walked with hunched shoulders, their skeletal limbs clanking as they advanced on their enemy. Their eyes glowed green, as bright as the strange alien glyphs that gleamed at the centre of exposed rib cages. "Talon, help me!" Talon looked in the direction of the frightened voice. Riz was pinned to the ground beneath a massive slab of masonry. Talon ran to him and attempted to pull him free. When that didn't work, he tried to lift the huge chunk of rockcrete from the champion's body. It was far too heavy. "Do something!" Riz whined. At the end of the street, the Astra Militarum were fighting back, lasfire bouncing harmlessly from the metal invaders' gaunt bodies. The aliens returned fire with the large energy blasters they wielded in their clawed hands. Talon didn't want to see the result, not again. He looked around, seeing Splitter lying forgotten on the floor. "You better not shock me again," he warned, snatching up the Spudjacker. The weapon was already over his head as he turned towards the trapped champion. "No! What are you doing?" Riz cried out as Talon brought Splitter down, pummeling the unmovable chunk of debris. "I thought you were gonna hit me!" Riz squeaked as Talon slammed the rock over and over again, cracks spiderwebbing from each blow. "Don't tempt me, just hold still." At the end of the street, one of the aliens turned towards the sound of metal against rockcrete. "Hurry up!" Riz pleaded, not taking his eyes from the metal monster. The skeleton turned and strode towards them. Talon roared with frustration as he brought the Spudjacker down one last time, splitting the rockcrete in 2. He rammed the end of the staff into the crack, prizing the 2 halves apart so Riz could wriggle out. The alien raised its weapon. "Give me that!" Riz said, clambering to his feet and grabbing Splitter. He shoved against Talon, knocking him over. Talon hit the ground hard, shards of rockcrete digging into his back. Riz was already running for the ventilation shaft, leaving Talon for dead. The alien fired, green energy arcing towards Riz. The beam hit the champion between the shoulder blades, and in a flash, Riz was gone. Splitter clattered to the ground, its shaft smoking from where Riz had gripped it mere seconds before. The alien swung its blaster around to face Talon. For a moment, Talon couldn't do anything. He couldn't run. He couldn't even breathe. He just stared down the barrel of the alien's glowing cannon. A frag grenade bounced down the street before the Necron could fire, coming to rest by the invader's skeletal feet. The Necron looked down and... boom! Talon threw up his hand to protect himself from the sudden flash, the pungent smoke making him gag. When he looked up, the alien's metal limbs were scattered across the floor, and an Imperial Guardswoman was yelling at him from the other end of the road. "What are you waiting for, kid?" she shouted. "Get out of here before—" The woman's voice trailed off. She was staring down to where the alien had been, eyes wide with disbelief. The skeleton's twisted limbs were crawling back towards each other, the hideous body reforming piece by piece. Within seconds, it was standing tall, missing only its ghastly head. It reached down, finding the silver skull next to its discarded cannon. Its fingers clanked on the metal as it returned the head to its neck. There was a sharp click, and its sunken eyes blazed green once more. Sparks bounced off the reanimated monster as the guard opened fire at point-blank range. "Get to the spaceport!" she yelled at Talon. "Get on a ship!" Talon ran, only stopping to snatch up Splitter. The Spudjacker was still warm to the touch. He could have headed back underground, but the guardswoman was right. He needed to get off Targian. He needed to escape. Those things weren't going to stop until everyone was dead and gone. The landing bay was in turmoil, starships already blasting off. Everywhere he looked, he could see enterprising captains offering safe passage from Targian, for the right price, of course. Talon snorted. Even now, when the world was falling around their ears, people were trying to make money. There was only one snag. He hadn't an Imperial credit to his name. Ahead of him, an old man struggled towards a large void ship. It was Hinkins, the toolsmith, lugging a heavy box. The oldling tripped and fell, tools spilling everywhere. Swinging Splitter onto his back, Talon ran over to help. "Leave that alone," Hinkins snapped as Talon grabbed a power hammer from the ground. "I can help," he insisted, dropping the hammer back into the old man's box. "Just take me with you, please." Hinkins looked into Talon's eyes, then down to the Runak patch on his jacket. "I'm not with them anymore," Talon said quickly, his decision made. "I just want to get away." "You and everyone else?" The old man hesitated before shoving the box into the ganger's arms. "I'm leaving on the Mercator," he said, nodding towards the void ship. "You can come if you carry my tools." "Thank you," Talon said, as Hinkins hobbled on. "I won't let you down." "You better not," the toolsmith said. "Come on, shake your leg. From what I hear about her, Captain Clennon won't wait for long." Chapter 7. Escape. "Going down!" Zelia screamed as the skimmer's engine finally died. The hover sled plunged into a nosedive and carved a path through the scarabs that had crawled up the walls of the hive to scurry into the spaceport. "Out!" Elise barked as the Necron scavengers overran the downed skimmer. Zelia threw herself from the doomed hover sled and had to dodge the las beams of guardsmen trying to blast as many of the metallic beetles as they could. "Are you all right?" Elise asked as the soldiers herded them towards the landing bays. Zelia nodded, catching her breath. "Just need to work on my landings." "We're never going to make it to the Scriptor," Erasmus said, still clutching his satchel. The Lex mechanic had a point. Zelia had never seen such turmoil. People were trampling over each other to get to the ships, their cries drowned out by the engines of dozens of star cruisers trying to take off at once. Above them, two shuttles collided in mid-air, crashing back to the ground as would-be evacuees jumped out of the way of the burning wrecks. Elise grabbed Zelia's hand and dragged her through the crowd, Meki and Erasmus following close behind. No one was looking where they were going. Zelia lost grip of her mum's hand and was about to shout after her when screams broke out on the other side of the spaceport near the market as one of the heaving mass of people turned and ran. A short, stubby man with bare, hairy feet barged into Zelia, knocking her to the floor. She screamed, curling into a ball to stop herself being crushed. Hands grabbed her, pulling her up. It was Meki, his remaining servo sprite buzzing above the stampeding crowd. "Why are people running?" she asked, and then heard the telltale sound of crackling lightning. She twisted around to see a line of Necrons advancing on the dock. The last remnants of the Imperial Guard were moving to intercept, but their las rifles were no match for the Necrons' cannons. Zelia ducked as a shuttle took off right over her, its boarding ramp only narrowly missing her head. Every ship in the spaceport was fleeing now. Most made it, but others were struck by Necron energy and sent spinning back to the ground. Others didn't even manage to take off, their hulls dismantled by Necron scarabs before their rockets could fire. "Mum!" Zelia yelled, looking around. "Where are you?" "Zelia!" came the reply as Elise was swept away by the crowd. There was no way they could get to her. "Erasmus!" Elise shouted, barely able to make herself heard. "Get the kids onto a ship! Any ship! Just get them away from here!" "What about you?" Zelia yelled back. "I'll get to the Scriptor and..." The rest of her sentence was lost in the clamour of the dock. Zelia pushed against the crowd, but Elise was nowhere to be seen. "Mum? Mum!" Erasmus grabbed her arm and bundled her forward. "Wait! What are you doing? We can't leave her!" The Lex mechanic looked her straight in the eye. "Your mum will be fine. She's a survivor, but she's right. We'll never make it to the Scriptor." "Then where shall we go?" Meki asked. Erasmus pointed to a large void ship that was preparing to depart. "The Mercator. I know her captain. She'll let us on board." "Are you sure?" Zelia asked. Erasmus tapped the leather purse hanging from his belt. "If she doesn't, I've enough credits to persuade her. Let's go." That was easier said than done, as they fought against the tide of spacefarers, all desperate to make their own escape. The servo sprite led the way, flying high above the heads of the crowd, but by the time they reached the Mercator, its cargo doors were closing. "Quick, get on!" Erasmus yelled, propelling Zelia and Meki through the closing doors. The void ship rose into the air, and Erasmus leapt, hanging from the bottom of the hatch. He dangled in the air as the Mercator swept out of the spaceport. Zelia and Meki grabbed his arms and pulled him aboard with seconds to spare. The cargo doors slid shut, all three of them tumbling to the deck. "Thank you," he wheezed, trying to get up as the ship was struck by Necron lightning. He tumbled back to the floor, clutching his satchel to his chest. The Mercator shook, but flew on, seemingly unscathed. Zelia helped Erasmus up, looking around for a viewport. "I need to see if Mum took off." "Let's find the captain," Erasmus said, leading them through the crowd. "Perhaps she'll be able to contact the scriptor." They found a stairwell and climbed up to an observation deck. Like the cargo bay, the place was packed, a throng of warm, sticky bodies pressing in from all sides. Zelia pushed forward, sharp elbows jabbing into her as everyone competed for too little space. She didn't know what was more deafening, the relentless bellow of the engines or the frantic jabbering of the frightened refugees. They hadn't even left Targian's atmosphere and the arguments were breaking out. The survivors quarrelled, jealously guarding what few possessions they'd managed to bring with them, glaring at each other with suspicion. And then there was the smell. The place reeked. The stifling temperature on the observation deck was taking its toll. You could almost taste the sweat in the air, stale and bitter. You could almost taste the fear. "Zelia, look!" Erasmus pointed towards a large viewport at the far end of the deck. Outside, Ral Rata was collapsing in on itself, the giant hive tumbling to the ground. A huge cloud of dust billowed up after the Mercator as it rocketed away from the surface. All at once, Targian's rust-coloured sky gave way to inky blackness. They were in space. They had got away. Zelia kept pushing forwards, wanting to see if she could spot the scriptor. The ship jolted and she staggered, Meki catching her before she could fall. That's when she saw the boy, bunched up on the floor by the viewport. It was the ganger who had saved her from a beating on the scriptor. His eyes were wide as he rocked back and forth, arms locked around his knees. Fighting her way through to him, Zelia reached out her hand to touch his shoulder. "Hello?" He jumped, glancing up at her in terror. "Get away!" "I wouldn't bother with him," said a nearby old-timer sorting tools in a large box. "He said he was going to help, but he's been a gibbering wreck ever since we took off." "So loud," the boy whined, his voice more like a frightened child than a streetwise ganger. Zelia glanced down and saw Splitter lying by his feet. What had happened to its original owner? "Zelia, we need to find Captain Clennon," Erasmus reminded her. But Zelia ignored him. The boy had helped her. Now it was her turn to return the favour. "Have you ever been on a starship before?" The boy shook his head. "Never even been off the ground." She rested a hand on his arm. The muscles beneath his skin were taut. "It's all right to be scared." He batted her hand away. No, it's not. If you're scared, you're nothing. If you're scared, you're..." The ship swayed and he cried out, grabbing Zelia and pulling her close. This was more help than she'd been prepared to give, but she went with it, trying to push him away as gently as possible. He was muttering beneath his breath, "Make it stop, make it stop." "It's fine," she said quietly. "Really it is. Remind me, what's your name?"
"Talon,"
he stammered.
"Talon Stormweaver."
"Pleased to meet you, Talon Stormweaver," Meki said politely. Zelia smiled. "These are my friends, Meki and Erasmus." "How do you know each other?" Erasmus asked. "Talon saved me when the gangers broke into the ship." She turned back to Talon, who had jumped to his feet.
"You said we were safe,"
the boy babbled. "We are now," she promised.
"And what are those?"
She looked where he was pointing and frowned. The Mercator wasn't alone. At least a dozen ships were flying in a loose formation alongside them. Some were Imperial Navy, although most were civilian. However, that wasn't what Talon was looking at. A flotilla of smaller ships was zooming up from the planet's surface, sleek and powerful, with scythe-like wings glinting in the starlight. The same ships that had attacked the Hive. "It's the Necrons," she gasped. Talon looked at her in confusion. "Is that what they're called? The aliens?" She nodded. "We saw them out in the wastelands, but Space Marines were fighting them. I thought they would win."
Then you thought wrong. Look!
Behind the Necron ships, giant cracks appeared across the surface of Targia. The continents crumbled, light bursting from the ravaged crust. Zelia shielded her eyes as the planet ripped itself apart, exploding into emerald starfire. Chapter 8. Warp Space. The ship shook as planetary debris buffeted the hull, striking hard against the armor-glass viewport. Zelia lurched into Talon, who grabbed her arms to stop her tumbling to the floor.
Did they do that?
"The entire planet," Erasmus whispered. "Gone." The Necron ships kept coming, chasing down the evacuees. Energy lanced from beneath their wings, and a battered freighter at the rear of the escaping convoy burst into flames. The Necrons didn't even stop, screeching through the wreckage to find another target. The refugees pressed against the viewports as the Necrons tore through one ship after another. How long before those crackling guns turned on the Mercator? "Hey, what are you doing with that?" It was the old man shouting at Meki. The Martian boy had a Vox unit in his hands and was probing the device with the haptic implants on his fingers. "Give it back," the toolsmith demanded, only to find himself having to fight off an angry servo sprite. "It's mine!" "Here," said Erasmus, shoving a handful of copper coins into the toolsmith's hands. "We'll buy it from you, is that enough?" "It'll do," the old man grumbled, counting out the credits in his palm. The Martian boy thrust the box into Zelia's hands. She looked at Meki in confusion, before she heard a familiar voice issuing from the speaker.
Zelia? Zelia, can you hear me?
Mum, are you all right?" Elise's voice was distorted by static.
I can't hear you.
The signal failed, but Meki reached over and flicked a dial on the side of the box. Elise was back, faint but recognisable.
"On the scriptor. Managed to take off before the planet exploded. If I can't find you, meet at Emperor's Seat. Do you hear me, Zelia? Emperor's Seat."
A cry went up behind them. Zelia turned to see a Necron ship right behind them, larger than the rest. Cannons bristled along its wings, their barrels throbbing with the energy that would rip into them at any second.
"Mum!"
Zelia yelled into the box.
"I don't know what you mean. What's the Emperor's Seat?"
The Necron warship prepared to fire, the refugees racing from the viewports as if they could somehow outrun the deadly beams.
"Mum!"
Behind them, heavy shutters slammed down over the viewports, blocking the view of the attacking ship. Zelia felt her stomach flip. That could only mean one thing.
"What's going on?"
Talon cried out, looking around in alarm.
"We've gone into warp space,"
Zelia told him, willing her guts to stop churning.
"I don't know what that means,"
Talon admitted. "It's a shortcut through another dimension," Erasmus explained.
"Another dimension?"
"That allows you to cross vast distances in a fraction of the time, yes," said Erasmus. The void ship shuddered. "Some journeys are more turbulent than others."
"What's with the shutters?"
Talon said, pressing his hand against the armor glass.
"Why can't we see outside?"
"To look upon the warp is to go mad," Meki intoned in his soft, monotonous voice.
"What's that supposed to mean?"
"It means that some things are best left a mystery," Zelia told him. "I've no idea what warp space looks like, but if you believe the stories, it's a living nightmare." Talon gripped his stomach and leaned against the wall.
"I don't feel well."
"Just hope it isn't warp sickness," snorted the old toolsmith, still glaring at them.
"What's warp sickness?"
Talon asked, sweat beading his brow. "Your head turns inside out," Meki told him, "and your body becomes a puddle on the floor." "Meki!" Zelia scolded him. "He did ask," the Martian pointed out. "They're just stories," Zelia told him. "I've travelled all over the Imperium and I've never heard of anyone becoming a puddle." "Doesn't mean the stories aren't true," sneered the toolsmith.
How come you've travelled? Talon asked, turning his back on the old man.
We're archaeotechs, Erasmus told him. We travel from place to place digging up the past.
Why?
The question seemed to flummox the Lex mechanic. Why? To learn, of course, to understand. Talon looked as if the very idea were as alien as the Necrons.
And that was your mum, on the box?
Zelia nodded, looking mournfully at the communicator. Can't you get her back?
Not while we're in the warp.
The ship juddered and then bucked violently, the shutters sliding up to reveal a very different starfield. We're not, Erasmus observed. Not anymore.
What happened?
Asked Talon. Meki found a cogitator port in the wall and inserted a haptic implant. We were thrown back into the material. Talon looked like he was about to punch someone in frustration.
The what? Don't any of you speak normally?
We've dropped back into real space, Zelia said, checking the box. It happens, but it's never good. We're just lucky that the ship is still in one piece. And that we've escaped the Necrons, Erasmus added.
How do you know? Can't they warp out, or whatever you call it?
Zelia shrugged. To be honest, I don't know. I think only humans use warp space.
You think? I thought you were the one who travelled from one end of the galaxy to the other.
Erasmus cut in. Even if that were possible, which it isn't, by the way, there's much about aliens that we just don't know. Not yet, anyway.
Until you dig something out of the ground.
The Lex mechanic beamed at the ganger, as if Talon were his favourite pupil.
Exactly. Until then, the Emperor will protect us.
Yeah, Talon sighed sarcastically, because he's doing such a great job so far.
Shh, Meki hissed. Someone will hear.
So, the Martian looked appalled. To speak against the Emperor is heresy. He is our Lord and Protector.
Yeah, well, I bet he's never had to crawl through a sewer to escape an ambush. 3 years I survived beneath the hive, and no one protected me. I had to look after myself.
Meki looked confused, as if Talon's statement didn't quite compute. You were a member of a gang. Talon bristled.
What of it?
The Martian arched an eyebrow. Then you had protection from your compatriots.
Talon shoved the Martian away. You talk like an oldling. Trust me, you still needed to watch your own back, especially in a gang like the Warriors. We were all alone one way or another.
Erasmus was peering quizzically at the lad.
You no longer class yourself one of these warriors then.
What?
You needed to watch your back. Past tense, you've left them behind.
Talon opened up his arms as if to show Erasmus the crowded deck for the first time.
I don't see them here, do you?
Scowling, he bent down and snatched up the spud jacker. Zelia wasn't really listening to the conversation. Instead, she was pressing buttons on the Vox. The unit was more than a communicator. It seemed to also have data slate capabilities, although all she wanted to do was re-establish a link to her mum. The servo sprite fussed around her head, and Zelia swatted it away.
It only wants to help,
said Meki, appearing at her side.
Here, let me.
He took the Vox slate and started pressing buttons. Zelia turned to the viewport and pulled open her omniscope to search the stars. The captain would soon plunge the void ship back into warp space, maybe after she had made contact with the rest of the evacuation fleet. But where was the scriptor? Where was her mum? The scope beeped as it locked on to something small in the midst of the pitch-black void. The cogitator automatically zoomed in, but Zelia still couldn't make out what it was. More blips appeared on the heads-up display. Cold dread crept into the pit of her stomach. Beside her, the Vox slate crackled. A voice hissed from the speakers, but it wasn't her mum.
Targian fleet, come in, please.
That's Captain Clennon, Erasmus said.
I appear to have picked up a transmission from the Mercator's flight deck, Meki reported. The voice was bordering on the hysterical.
We've been thrown out of the Immaterium. My navigator incapacitated. Please give position. Xenos approaching. Repeat, Xenos approaching. Approaching?
Talon echoed.
What does she mean, Xenos approaching?
Zelia's mouth was dry, and she answered. The Necrons. They've found us.
What?
Erasmus grabbed the omniscope, pulling it from her grip.
But that's impossible. We must be light years from Targian.
Then the Necrons must be capable of faster than light travel. Mickey said, matter-of-factly.
How can you be so calm?
Talon snapped. Mickey just stared at him. Becoming emotional will not help our situation, Talon Stormweaver.
Tell that to everyone else,
Zelia said. Panic had set in on the observation deck, the refugees staring at the advancing fighters in dismay. Some were openly sobbing, while others were gathering up their pitiful belongings as if they had somewhere to run. Even the old toolsmith was pushing through the crowd, wanting to get away from the windows, abandoning all his prized possessions.
Why have they followed us? Zelia asked. Why are they hunting us down?
Erasmus looked as though he was going to answer as the ship shuddered violently. The lead Necron ship had fired, green energy flaring around the viewports. A crack appeared in front of Zelia. She watched in strange fascination as tiny fractures started to spread out across the armour glass. How long would it be before the entire window shattered? Captain Clennan's voice crackled from the boxlight.
Under attack! Attempting to jump into the warp!
It's fine, she's going to get us away, Zelia said. But Erasmus grabbed her arm.
No, we can't take that risk.
Another bolt struck the ship.
We need to get to an escape pod.
But we'd be thrown out into space,
Talon said, swallowing.
We'll be alive,
the Lex mechanic told him.
unless you want to stay here.
We are more likely to find an escape pod capable of taking 3 of us, Neki pointed out, trying not to be cruel but simply stating facts.
No,
Zelia insisted.
we stick together. Talon comes with us, if he wants to, that is.
Talon gripped Splitter with both hands. I've nowhere else to go.
That settles it then,
Erasmus said, giving Zelia her omniscope.
Come on.
Unfortunately, everyone else had had the same idea. The refugees rushed for the escape pods, scrapping with each other as they tried to scramble into the small lifecraft.
Here!
Erasmus shouted, pulling open a hatch so the children could enter an empty pod. But before Zelia could clamber into the cramped compartment, a hairy hand grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back.
My pod,
insisted the giant that had all but thrown her into Meki. It was an Ogryn, a wall of solid muscle with little in the way of brains. Ogryns had evolved on colonies with harsh environments and high gravity. The Imperial Guard often used the brutes as shock troops, but judging by this one's appearance, he hadn't seen service for quite some time. He was missing an arm, and his belly had long since given way to blubber.
Back off, Plank,
Talon said, stepping up to the hulking lout.
This is our pod. We were here first.
and I am bigger than you,
the Ogryn grunted.
so I say it's mine.
We'll see about that,
Talon said, brandishing Splitter.
Talon, don't,
Zelia told him, before he could get into any more trouble. The Ogryn's thick lips split into an ugly grin. It wasn't a pretty sight.
Nice jacker. I'll take that too.
The Ogryn ripped Splitter from Talon's grip.
Give that back, or you'll be sorry,
Talon warned.
Oh yeah?
The Ogryn said, testing the Spudjacker's weight.
Yeah,
Talon replied.
backlash!
The Ogryn howled as the booby trap was triggered. He crumpled into a heap, electricity surging over his body.
Get in,
Talon told them.
what about your weapon?
Erasmus asked as he clambered in through the airlock.
Leave it, doesn't look like there'll be enough space anyway.
He was right. The pod was tiny. They barely all fit as they crushed together on the metal benches that lined the escape pod. Meki plunged his haptic implants into the pod's cogitator, trying to access the launch sequence, his servo sprite flitting around his head. There was a growl, and the Ogryn appeared at the airlock, screaming,
My pod.
Shut the door!
Zelia cried out as the giant tried to push his way in. I cannot, Meki said. The abhuman is standing in the way.
I don't believe this,
said Talon, undoing the restraining harness he'd already secured across his chest. Grabbing the rail that ran along the low ceiling, he swung forward, his boots thudding into the Ogryn's chest. To everyone's surprise, including Talon, the brute shot back as if fired out of a cannon. There was a beep from the cogitator, and the airlock slammed shut, hissing as it sealed. Wow, Zelia said, genuinely impressed. Talon shrugged as if such things happened all the time. Don't know my own strength sometimes.
Strap yourself in,
Erasmus said as the ship shook. Through the box, they heard the captain giving the order to jump back into the immaterium.
we need to launch before they enter the warp,
Erasmus said.
Otherwise
Otherwise what? Talon asked, snapping his belt back in place.
Remember what Mickey said. Anyone exposed to the warp goes insane, or worse.
Talon's voice pitched up another octave.
What do you mean worse? What's worse than going mad?
To be perfectly honest, I don't know, the Lex mechanic admitted, and I don't want to find out. Mickey?
Almost there, Mickey said, concentrating on the cogitator. Almost isn't good enough, Zelia snapped. The captain was counting down to the jump on the Vox, the ship coming under wave after wave of Necron fire. 5, 4, 3, Mickey, 2, now, barked the Martian. There was a clunk, and the escape pod ejected itself into the void at the exact moment the Mercator shot into warp space. Zelia cried out, but her scream was lost in the roar of the void ship's engines. The pod's glow globes strobed, the walls rattling as they were jettisoned. Had the Mercator already leapt into the immaterium? Had they been flung into the nightmarish dimensions of the warp? Something hard struck Zelia's head, starlight bursting across her vision. And then there was darkness. Chapter 9. Flea Pit. Zelia snapped awake. She had no idea how long she'd been unconscious, only that everyone was screaming, including Meki. So much for not getting emotional. The escape pod jolted, throwing her forwards. Only her belt stopped her from crashing into Talon, who was being shaken around like a rag doll in his harness. They'd hit something. Something hard. The pod bounced and rolled, turning them over and over. With one final jarring kick, they came to an abrupt stop, more or less the right way up. "Is everyone all right?" she gasped. "Ask me when my head stops spinning," Talon groaned. Meki didn't complain. He was already checking the pod's sensors, trying to work out where they had landed. Zelia pressed the release on her safety belt and winced as the harness whipped away. She could imagine the bruise that was probably already forming where the restraints had cut into her shoulder, not to mention the lump that had sprung up on her head. The deck was littered with boxes and containers from the overhead lockers. She wondered which of those had struck her when they launched. "Any ideas where we are?" Erasmus asked Meki. The Martian shook his head. "Nothing is working," he said flatly. "Not the picked feed, not anything." His servo sprite had crawled into an access panel, and they could hear it scrabbling around inside the hull, trying to help its master. Then there was another noise at the door. It sounded like claws scraping against the airlock. "What's that?" Talon asked. "How are we supposed to know?" Zelia replied, staring at the door. "I just wish you'd brought that weapon of yours," Erasmus whispered. "You and me both," Talon agreed. The scraping increased. Something was definitely trying to get in. Talon unclipped his belt and pushed himself up from his seat, stooping against the low ceiling as he faced the door. "Meki, open the airlock." "Are you crazy?" Zelia asked, the scrabbling becoming more frantic. "Probably, but I can't see you fighting whatever that is. It could be a wild animal." "Then I'd rather face it out there than in here. Meki, open the doors." Meki's hand went to the controls. "No!" Zelia shouted. "We don't know if the atmosphere is breathable." But it was too late. With a hiss, the airlock swung open. With a deafening battle cry, Talon launched himself through the open door. There was a flash of orange fur, and then the ganger was gone. Cold air blew into the pod. Outside was a frozen wilderness, snow and ice as far as the eye could see. Zelia scrambled out of the pod, blinking against the glare of an unfamiliar sun. "Get it off me!" Talon shouted. The ganger was pinned down in the middle of the ragged path the pod had cut through the snow, a large, shaggy animal on his chest. "By the golden throne!" Erasmus exclaimed, following Zelia into the freezing cold air. "Is that what I think it is?" The creature was distinctly ape-like, with matted orange fur and sharp yellow fangs drawn back in a snarl. It had bionic implants around its arms and shoulders, its simian fingers unnaturally long. Further implants ran down its spine, armour-like plates overlapping to form a kind of pack. "It is a Jokero," Meki said from the door of the escape pod, his voice filled with something approaching awe.
I have always wanted to see one.
We can swap places if you want,
Talon croaked. Please, Zelia started, stepping towards the ape. My friend didn't mean you any harm. We were just scared. The Jaquero's green eyes darted from her to the others. She turned to Meki. Can it understand me? According to the Magos biologists on Mars, the Jaquero are incredibly intelligent. They are master weaponsmiths, capable of understanding the most complex technology. Where did it come from?
Does that matter?
Talon gasped.
I doubt it's from around here,
said Erasmus. He was looking at their surroundings. They'd landed at the foot of a snow-capped mountain, coming to rest on a steep slope. There was a forest full of weird, almost mushroom-like trees to the north and empty plains to the south.
I think they originated on the throne world.
On Terra? Zelia asked. Are you sure?
Seriously,
Talon grunted.
Can we do this after you've got it off me?
Erasmus took a step nearer the creature.
Did you come from the ship? Did you come from the Mercator?
How could he? Zelia asked. Surely he couldn't survive a journey through space. The ape only growled in response, a deep animalistic sound. Can you speak?
Who cares?
Snapped Talon. The Jaquero pushed the ganger deeper into the compacted snow. With a buzz, Meki's servo sprite flew from the pod. The snarl fell from the Jaquero's face as it watched the sprite with almost hungry fascination. The tiny robot fluttered down to the ape, settling onto its shoulder before plunging one of its probe-tipped fingers into one of the Jaquero's implants. Both the ape and Meki gasped in unison. Zelia looked at the Martian. His eyes had closed, his head cocked to the side. The ape's head was locked in the same position. Were they communicating? Meki's eyes flicked open. It belonged to a family in the spires on Raurata. Belonged? Zelia asked. You mean like a pet? The Jaquero growled. More like a slave, Meki told her. It escaped during the attack and got on board the Mercator. He paused. His eyes clouded as if he was searching memories that weren't his. He saw us getting threatened by the Ogrin and pulled it away. Ha! Zelia laughed. So much for Talon not knowing his own strength. Oi! Talon complained beneath the creature. He leapt into the escape pod when we launched, protecting himself from the void. Meki continued, his voice cracking. He was so scared, so alone. There was another pause before Meki added, Fliegenpala.
What's that?
Erasmus asked. His name, Meki replied. His name is Fliegenpala. The Jaquero snorted, nodding in agreement.
More like flea pit,
Talon jibed. The Jaquero jumped off him, glaring at the ganger. He does not like you, Meki told Talon. Tell it the feeling's mutual. I think it knows that already, Zelia said. He, Meki corrected her, not it. The Jaquero scampered forward, running on his hands and feet. He swept past Zelia to jump up onto the roof of the escape pod and proceeded to pull chunks of plating from the hull. Hey, stop it! Talon shouted, leaping up. No, Meki said, raising a hand. Wait! The Jaquero pulled out a handful of wires and his fingers became a blur as he started to reconnect them in a new configuration. With a sudden thrum of power, light spilled out of the airlock. The Jaquero slapped the roof of the pod, grunting at them in satisfaction. He reactivated the power cell, Meki gasped as a wave of welcome heat washed out of the escape pod. He is a genius. The Jaquero snorted proudly. I still think he's a flea pit, Talon muttered, glaring at the ape. The Jaquero ignored him, swinging into the pod where he jumped onto one of the benches and made space for the others. I think he wants us to go back in, Erasmus said. Why? Talon asked. So he can beat us to a pulp in comfort? No, because he wants us to keep warm, Meki said, clambering back into the pod without hesitation. I'm not going in there with that thing, Talon insisted. Then try not to freeze out here, Erasmus said, joining Meki. Zelia gave Talon what she hoped was an encouraging smile and followed them in. Talon stood and shivered for a moment, his arms wrapped around himself, before giving in.
Oh, fine, I'll come in. But don't come crying to me if he murders us all.
Chapter 10. Taking the lead. Thankfully, all Fleeg and Pala did was improve their living conditions. Working with Meki and the ever-attentive servo sprite, the Jokero boosted the internal heaters until the pod was as toasty as an oven. He then amplified the pod's scry sensors and linked them to Meki's wrist screen. Unfortunately, the new sensors still couldn't tell them where they were. The stars in the cold sky didn't match any constellation Meki had stored in his wrist-mounted cogitator. Erasmus suggested that the pod had been ejected at the exact moment the Mercator had entered warp space. He might have been slung halfway across the galaxy. It was a miracle that they had survived at all. Searching beneath the benches, Zelia and Talon found thermal blankets, which Fleepit fashioned into coats. The Jokero wasn't exactly happy that Talon's nickname had stuck, but it was certainly easier to pronounce than Fleeg and Pala. They had also found a case of emergency rations, flakes of dried food which Erasmus heated on a hot plate that Fleepit somehow created from the pod's boosters. Their first supper on the ice planet was hardly a feast, but it was welcome nonetheless. While Meki and Fleepit scanned for Vox signals, Zelia braved the elements and ventured outside. Even with her new thermal coat, the temperature was almost unbearable, but she wanted to take another look at the sky. Staring through her omniscope, she looked from one cluster of stars to another, but there was nothing the scope's primitive cogitator recognized. No known constellations, it reported in her mother's voice. Zelia sighed. The voice print was now all she had of her mum. No, that was a lie. Reaching inside her coat, she pulled out a crumpled picture. The faded image showed her mum and dad holding a laughing baby. Zelia smiled sadly. That was before her dad had died while excavating a crashed space hulk on Palakos. A tear splashed down onto the pict and froze. Zelia sniffed, slipping the image back into her jacket. I'll find you, she promised her mum out loud. Unit not lost, replied the scope. Zelia laughed.
Aye,
Came a shout from the pod.
give that back.
She rushed back inside to find Meki sprawled across the floor, Talon standing over it. How was that even possible? There hadn't been enough space to swing a Jerinx before. How was the pod now large enough for Talon and Meki to fight? What's going on? She asked. Talon was holding the leather pouch he usually kept on his belt.
Your friend is a thief.
Talon spat. Fleepit jumped between them, stretching out a long arm to protect Meki. I was not stealing, the Martian insisted. I only wanted to see if it contained something that could help construct a beacon to send out a distress signal.
There's nothing for you in there,
Talon said, snapping the pouch back onto his belt. Zelia looked at Erasmus, who just shrugged, holding his own satchel close.
Don't look at me, they're old enough to sort out their own disagreements.
Zelia threw up her hands in exasperation. Thanks, Erasmus, that's a great help.
Don't take it out on him,
Talon said.
he's right. What's he got to do with you anyway?
Zelia couldn't believe what she was hearing. What's it got to do with us? Talon, if we're going to survive all this, we're going to have to try to get on with each other.
Why, we're not friends?
He jabbed a finger at Meki.
He didn't even want me here.
Can you blame me? Meki muttered, just loud enough for them to hear.
Meki!
Zelia exclaimed.
No, it's fine,
Talon said.
I get it, Cogboy. I'll stay out of your way if you keep out of mine.
But Talon, Zelia began, only for the ganger to cut her off.
No, Zelia, I don't need him, and I don't need you. I don't need anyone.
There was a buzz, and a glowing hololith appeared in the air, projected from one of the lenses Meki wore around his head. It showed Talon back on the void ship, grabbing Zelia and holding her close. Talon stared at it in horror, especially as the hologram zoomed in to focus on his terrified face.
Make it stop,
the hololith pleaded.
make it stop.
Meki, that's enough, Zelia shouted. The electronic image vanished, although Meki still glared, visibly shocked Talon.
What was that?
The ganger stammered. Meki keeps a hololog of our expeditions,
Zelia explained, recording everything we discover.
That doesn't mean he can record me,
Talon said, going to stomp outside. Zelia tried to stop him.
Where are you going? Anywhere he isn't,
said Talon, shooting a venomous look at the Martian. Zelia let him pass. The door swung open, and after a sudden gust of wind, slammed shut. She dropped onto one of the benches, suddenly feeling bone-tired. She looked up at Meki, who was frantically tapping on his wrist display to hide his anger. Day one, and they'd already come to blows. Meki and Talon were arguing, and then there was Erasmus. She'd expected the Lex mechanic to take control, but he had retreated into himself, content to sit in the corner of the escape pod hugging that satchel of his. Someone had to take the lead, and it looked like it was going to be her.
So, Meki, she said, forcing a smile, tell me about this beacon.
Chapter 11. Searching for scrap. Humans were fools. Fliegenpala had always known this, of course he had, and he hadn't seen anything to change his mind since crashing on this frozen rock. He'd wanted to clear them out of the escape pod before it had launched from the void ship, but dealing with that dunderhead of an Ogryn had meant the door had slammed shut before he could finish the job. Instead, he had had to crawl into a service hatch barely larger than himself, enduring the entire journey with his long arms wrapped around his body. Still, he was used to surviving in cramped surroundings. He'd spent enough years being locked in the dark with no space to move. Since they had landed, the stupid bipeds hadn't stopped arguing, even the Martian youth who seemed more intelligent than most. At least Meki could understand him and didn't refer to him by that ridiculous nickname. The first night had been long, with few of them able to sleep. Fliegenpala had expanded the internal dimensions of the escape pod to make them all more comfortable, but no one even seemed to notice, not even Meki. Only the mindless servo sprite seemed to fully appreciate his work. In fact, it wouldn't leave him alone. Fliegenpala wondered if it wanted to be augmented. He could easily arm it with a few digi-weapons, maybe mount some thunder missiles on those little wings, or give the little flitter an electro sting. The Jokero made a mental note to conjure something up for the mechanical imp at some point in the future. Of course, for that, they'd need supplies. Like all of his race, Fliegenpala could create the most sophisticated machines from the most basic parts. That's what made him such a valuable slave. He scratched at the restraining implant that had been fitted around his neck. It was the only device he couldn't tamper with, not unless he wanted 1,000 volts surging through his nervous system. Still, his master was now half a galaxy away. There was no way he could activate the implant from that distance, thank the old ones. Fliegenpala was safe here, whatever the condition. But even his genius had limits. Fliegenpala had done much with the pod, but needed fresh material, otherwise he'd have to start cannibalizing the sprite, or maybe the girl's omniscope, and then there was whatever the ruffian was hiding in his pouch. The young oaf had slept hugging it last night. Still, Fliegenpala knew the importance of secrets. He didn't want the others to know about his own secret stash either. That was for emergencies. Fliegenpala shivered through his fur. He despised the cold almost as much as he despised this sorry bunch of refugees. Still, they were being useful now, all except the one the others called Erasmus. The older human had refused to join the trek out into the forest to look for any components that may have fallen from the escape pod during its descent, anything they could use to make Meki's distress beacon. He just turned his back on them, practically curled up on one of the benches, muttering beneath his breath, "It will be all right, it will be all right." Something was obviously wrong with the oldling. Perhaps the destruction of Targian had derailed what was left of his fragile human mind, not that the children seemed to have noticed. Fliegenpala shook his head. He had lived in the presence of humans for centuries, passed from master to master like the possession he had become, and yet the Jokero still couldn't fathom how Terrans had ever conquered the stars. They were primitive and selfish, afraid of everything that was not like themselves, convinced of their own superiority. They moved through the galaxy like a virus, a disease infecting everything they touched. But for now, he needed them, even though they disgusted him. He could already feel his joints stiffening with the cold. If he was forced to withdraw into a hibernation cycle, he would need the humans to maintain the camp until they were rescued. If they were rescued, he needed to construct the beacon first. His foot touched something beneath the snow. It was a shard of dark red metal. Fleegenpala's brow furrowed. That hadn't come from the claw. He sniffed the scrap and then licked it. The biometric sensors in his tongue delivering a full report of its atomic structure to the cogitator embedded in his brain. It was of human manufacture, at least originally. Fleegenpala's hair bristled. Humans had been to this planet before. Interesting. Something moved through the trees, if indeed you could call them trees. They had mottled stalks rather than trunks, and wide caps instead of foliage. How had the girl described them when the group had set off this morning? Giant mushroom. Fleegenpala wondered if they could be used in some way or another. The prospect of constructing an organic weapon appealed to him. There it was again, moving between the stalks. One of the younglings, perhaps? No. It was too tall. The adult, then, and he finally pulled himself out of his sulk. Fleegenpala whistled through his teeth, and the servo sprite came flying. It landed on his open palm and allowed him to access the tiny control point between its wings. Usually, Fleegenpala would create a swarm of spy flies, but there was no need with the servo sprite already here. Linking the sprite to his own optical implants, he let the robot fly off again, seeing through its tiny eyes. His heart raced in his chest, and for a moment Fleegenpala was lost in the exhilaration of swooping through the air. Such freedom was as alien to him as the humans who had kept him locked in the darkness for decades at a time. But it made his soul sing in a way he had never dreamed possible. The sprite buzzed over Talon and the girl, both searching for salvage in the snow. Fleegenpala sniffed. They had found little that even he could use to build a distress beacon. At this rate, he'd definitely have to ransack his own reserves. That was annoying. Putting his frustrations aside, he urged the sprite on, searching for whoever it was that he'd spotted between the trees. Yes, there was definitely someone else in the forest. There were marks in the snow, deep footprints. Fleegenpala shifted uncomfortably. Judging by the length of the strides, whatever had made them was taller than any of the humans. The sprite flew faster, swooping between the stalks, but then stopped sharply. Fleegenpala's jaw dropping open as he realised what the sprite had been tracking. The figure was tall, with heavy armour across its broad shoulders and a single glowing eye in the middle of a silver skull. It stalked through the wood, a large rifle clutched in its skeletal hands. There was a Necron on the ice planet. And not just any Necron. A hunter. He had thought they were safe here, but he was wrong. Maybe he was as foolish as the humans. The Necron had come for them, and this time there would be nowhere to hide. Chapter 12. Cover your ears. Zelia looked up as something charged towards them. "What's that?" Talon said, putting himself in front of her. "Let me see," she said, shoving him aside. For a guy who wanted to be left alone, he spent a lot of time trying to protect her. A flailing shape came barreling out of the mushroom trees, kicking snow everywhere. Zelia went to run, until she realised it was Fleepy. The Jokero was thrashing his long arms in the air and screeching at the top of his lungs, the servo sprite following close behind. "What is it?" she asked as the simian floundered towards them. "What have you found?" The Jokero chattered an agitated response, but she was forced to shake her head. "I can't understand you." "Where's Cogboy?" Talon asked. "He can talk to this thing." "You mean Meki," she corrected him, "and I don't know." The Jokero rolled his eyes and grunted at the servo sprite. The robot darted obediently into the trees,
reappearing a few moments later with a panting Meki. "The sprite said there was danger," the Martian gasped. Fleepit chattered at it, and Meki raised his hands. "Slow down, please, you're talking too fast." The Jacaro growled in frustration and flexed his shoulders. As the children watched in amazement, the metal plates on his back opened like doors, and the servo sprite flew inside. Meki went to look where it had gone, but Fleepit raised a warning hand. Seconds later, the servo sprite emerged, carrying a ridiculous amount of technology, which it dumped into the snow. The door slammed shut, and Fleepit turned his back on them to rummage through the pile of gadgets. "Where did that lot come from?" Talon asked. Meki could only scratch his bald head in amazement. "I have heard that Jokero hides secret supplies of technology as rodents store nuts for winter." "Hide them where? In thin air?" "Something like that," Meki replied, "in micro-dimensions." Talon looked at Zelia for support. "Do you understand any of this?" She nodded, watching Fleepit work. "I think so. Erasmus has talked about them in the past. Micro-dimensions are supposed to be pocket universes, much smaller than our own." Talon shook his head. "No, that doesn't help at all. Think of them like the warp," Meki said, picking up the explanation. "A miniaturized reality that theoretically can be accessed by a portal or gate." "You mean that thing on his back?" Talon asked, as Fleepit started to bolt the gadgets together. "It's like a magic door where he keeps his stuff?" "Not magic," Meki insisted. "Science." "Same difference," Talon said, although a smile spread across his face as he realised what the Jacaro was building. "It's a cannon! A dirty big cannon!" He was right. Fleepit's jumble of gadgetry had been transformed into a large firearm that the Jacaro gleefully hefted onto his shoulder. "But why would we need a cannon?" Zelia asked. No one had a chance to answer as a bolt of green energy sizzled through the air between them to smash into one of the trees. The children dived for cover as the giant mushroom crashed into the clearing. There was no mistaking that energy. Talon looked around in panic. Was that a Necron?" Fleepit babbled an unintelligible reply before aiming his cannon. "Cover your ears," Meki warned, and the Jacaro fired. The cannon didn't fire energy or plasma bolts. Instead, a beam of pure sound shrieked into the trees, striking the nearest stalk. The tree shattered into 1,000 icy pieces, its cap crashing down to the ground. "Wow!" Talon cheered as the snow settled. "That was amazing!" Zelia's ears were still ringing. "You can't be serious! Are you kidding me?" Talon laughed, turning to the Jacaro. "Fire it again!" Fleepit didn't need telling twice. He squeezed the trigger, and another deafening shriek sliced through the trees in front of them. "It's a sonic cannon," Meki said, his face almost breaking into a grin. "Fighting with sound?" Talon asked. "That I've got to see." Fleepit chattered a response that no one but Meki could understand. "He says he saw a Necron hunter in the forest. It is searching for us." "Then I want a sonic cannon." "No," Zelia snapped. "No more weapons." Talon's eyebrows shot out. "Why not? Because we don't need them." More lightning fizzed out of the trees. They threw themselves to the ground as Fleepit returned fire. "You sure about that?" Talon asked. "It's like Mum always says," she said, trying to reason with him. "We spend our lives digging up war gear, weapons, tanks, old armour, not to mention the bones of the people who used them. We should learn from the mistakes of the past, not make them all over again." "Tell that to the Necron!" Talon yelled. Another mushroom tree exploded in a blaze of green energy. "Where is it?" Meki asked, peering into the trees. "Who cares?" Talon replied, grabbing Zelia's hand. "We need to get to cover." Zelia yanked her hand free but ran all the same. They dived between the stalks as Fleepit unleashed a fresh salvo of sonic pulses. Zelia looked back and realised that the Jacaro was giggling. He was actually enjoying himself. He was going to get them all killed. Another of the giant mushrooms came crashing down. She yelped and rolled out of the way. She looked up, spitting snow from her mouth. Where were Talon and Meki? Had they got out of the way of the great tree or been crushed beneath its stalk? Something moved behind her, a flash of dull silver among the mottled trees. Zelia clapped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. It was the Necron, rifle in hand. She ducked behind the nearest mushroom tree, only daring to peek out once her heart had stopped hammering. The alien was gone. Then she saw it again to her left, stalking away from her. How had it moved so fast? She wanted to warn the others, but knew shouting would give away her position. She needn't have worried. Spotting the metal skeleton, Fleepit turned and fired, obliterating even more trees. Zelia was thrown back, thermal coat flapping. When she looked up again, the Necron was gone. Had it been buried? "Zelia, behind you!" She snapped around, startled by Talon's shout. The Necron was racing towards her, a rictus grin beneath its glowing eye. She turned and ran, imagining a wave of green lightning washing over her, but skidded to a halt when she saw another Necron straight ahead. Its weapon was raised and ready to fire. Chapter 13. The Sound of Victory. "Get down!" Zelia didn't know who shouted the warning, Talon or Meki, but she followed it all the same. She dropped into the snow as Fleepit swept his cannon in a wide arc, sonic energy slicing through all the trees like a knife. She was sure the forest was going to come crashing down on her, but miraculously she survived the devastation. She looked up to see Talon running at full pelt, the Necron lurching after him. As she watched in terror, the skeletal stalker shimmered and vanished, only to reappear in front of the fleeing ganger. It shot out a grasping hand, but Talon ducked, dropping into a roll. The Necron's gaunt fingers closed around thin air, and then it was gone again. Talon scrabbled to his feet and started to run towards her when the air behind him started to shimmer. Zelia jumped up, knocking Talon to the ground as Necron energy zapped over their heads. By the time they looked up, wiping snow from their eyes, the Necron was nowhere to be seen. Talon jumped to his feet. "They're everywhere!" "No," she told him. "I don't think there's more than one. It's the same Necron, not an entire army." "But how can it move so quickly?" "I think it can teleport." "Teleport? How?" She shrugged. "I don't know, magic." Talon helped her up. "Don't let Mickey hear you saying that." She brushed snow from her cape. "What if it can slip in and out of our dimension like a void ship coming out of warp space? Or Fleepit's pocket universe?" "Exactly. It just looks like it's everywhere at once because it's hopping from place to place." Someone barged into them. Talon reacted instinctively, grabbing the newcomer and throwing them over his shoulder. "Ow!" Meki groaned from where he had landed in the snow. "Talon!" Zelia scolded, helping Meki back to his feet. "Sorry," Talon said, looking suitably embarrassed. "I thought you were skull features." Meki straightened his lenses. "The Necron is phasing through real space." "Yeah," Talon cut in, "hopping from dimension to confuse us." Meki looked shocked, and maybe even a little disappointed that they had worked it out for themselves. "Well, yes, but I cannot get Fleegan Pala to listen. He has gone berserk." That much was obvious by the constant scream of the sonic cannon. "But there's no way the monkey will hit the Necron if it can flit in and out of reality," Talon said. "First of all," sniffed Meki, "Fleegan Pala is a Jokero, not a monkey." "Does that matter?" "Yes," Meki insisted. "But we can argue about that later. In the meantime, you are right. It is extremely doubtful that Fleegan Pala will score a direct hit." "You don't say," Zelia said, pulling Meki out of the way of another beam. "I do, however, have a plan." "Well, don't keep us in suspense," Talon snapped. "I set the sprite on reconnaissance mode," Meki told them. It noticed that the Necron froze for a fraction of a second whenever the sonic beam swept near. Froze, as if the pulse interfered with its systems in some way. Fleegan Pala may be a terrible shot, but at least his weapon appears to disorientate our enemy. "But even if the monk..." Talon sighed as Meki shot him a dark look. "Even if the Jokero manages a direct hit, I've seen Necrons in action. Blast them to pieces and they just pull themselves back together. Then blasting is not the correct course of action." "Do you have any other suggestions?" Zelia asked, just as the Necron shimmered into view beside them. She cried out as its fingers clamped around her arm. Fleepit snapping around to focus on her screen, he fired, the sonic bolt hitting the Necron square in the chest. The alien's body shattered and Zelia was thrown clear. She landed in a heap, but even then wasn't safe. The Necron's severed hand was still locked around her wrist, its cold fingers twitching. She shook it loose and it thudded to the ground. Talon was beside her so fast, she almost wondered if he had learned how to teleport too. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she said, staring at the creepy hand. It was moving, crawling back towards the Necron's fragmented body. Talon lunged forward, and Zelia realised that he was going for the Necron's discarded gun. "No," she said, pulling him back. "No weapons, remember? That's your rule, not mine." He snapped back before his eyes went wide, and he shoved her out of the way of a bolt of Necron lightning. The Necron's other hand was still curled around the rifle's trigger. Even when it wasn't connected to a body, those skeletal fingers still wanted to destroy them. But the hand wouldn't stay disconnected for long. Talon was right. The scattered parts of the Necron were already knitting back together. With a cry of frustration, Zelia kicked out, booting the rifle so it was aiming away from them. The Necron's skull chattered, the eerie sound disturbingly like a laugh. It was staring past her, and Zelia felt the hairs bristle on the back of her neck. She threw herself down as another blast of sonic energy rushed over her, nearly taking off her head. "This is ridiculous," Zelia spluttered. "If the Necron doesn't get us, Fleepit will." "I will stop him," Meki said, spotting that Fleepit had his back to them and was firing indiscriminately in the other direction. Before Zelia could stop him, Meki ran into the clearing, dropping to the ground as Fleepit spun around to unleash another volley. "Fliegen Pala, it is I, your friend Meki." The ape stopped, panting hard, his eyes wild and unfocused. Zelia glanced back and saw that the Necron had almost reformed. Soon it would be able to snatch up its cannon and finish them off once and for all. Grabbing Talon's hand, she dragged him towards the others, where Meki was talking Fleepit down. "It is not going to work, Fliegenpala," the Martian was saying. "The Necron can self-repair, but I think we can disrupt its systems if we move quickly." "Really quickly," Zelia urged them. "It's almost back together. What are you thinking, Meki?" Meki reached out for Fleepit's cannon. "May I?" The ape snatched it away, glaring at the boy. "You can trust me," Meki insisted. "We are a team. We work together." Fleepit glared at the children, but reluctantly let Meki take the sonic gun. The Martian sagged under its weight, but Talon stepped forward, helping him carry it behind the shelter of a fallen mushroom tree. Zelia could hear the Necron's joints popping back into place across the clearing. "Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now." Meki was already at work, his haptic implants connected to the cannon. He was reconfiguring components on the weapon's barrel with his other hand, sliding parts back and forth. Fleepit's eyes went wide as he realised what the Martian was doing, and he let out an eager grunt. He dropped to Meki's side and started to assist. Meki looked into the Jaquero's excited face. "It should work, yes?" "What should work?" Talon asked. "What are you doing?" Something fizzed in the trees behind them. The Necron had teleported again. Zelia looked around, wondering where it would reappear. The answer came in a bolt of green energy streaking from behind. Fleepit pulled her down, squealing as the lightning glanced off his long arm. He snatched it back, a black streak across his forearm where the ray had scorched the orange hair. Fleepit's teeth were clenched against the pain, but he was still alive. They had been lucky, but there was no telling how long their luck would hold out. The Necron shimmered into being on the other side of the fallen tree. It stood tall, weapon raised, barely a scratch on its metal chest. The snow crunched beneath its metal feet as it marched towards them. "Meki!" Zelia hissed through gritted teeth. The Martian slapped the last component in place. The sonic cannon was a mess, cables running everywhere. But Meki seemed happy with his work. "This might hurt," he warned them, slamming his hand onto a switch he'd fashioned from the trigger. Zelia gasped with pain as an electronic banshee wail burst from the mangled cannon. The noise was unbearable, a long, high-pitched howl that seemed to cut through her bones. "We need to go!" It was Meki shouting right into her ear, struggling to be heard above the cannon's scream. "The pulse won't last much longer!" He helped her up, and she fought the urge to be sick. The sound was churning her stomach, her vision blurring as she staggered to her feet. She could barely put one foot in front of the other, but if it was hurting her, it was doing a lot worse to the Necron. The alien had collapsed into the snow, its body jerking uncontrollably as if thousands of volts were surging through its body. Its glowing eye flickered in time with the pulse, smoke rising from its servos. The Necron wasn't the only thing affected by the noise. Meki's sprite was convulsing on the floor, overwhelmed by the sonic attack. The Martian scooped it up and made for the trees, Fleepit lolloping in his wake. She teetered after them, forcing herself to run, only dimly aware of Talon racing alongside. The Necron didn't lurch after them. It was too busy screaming silently at the sky. Its ridged spine arched, its skeletal body bending in two. Then, with a sudden flash of light, it vanished into thin air. They had won. For now. Chapter 14. The Truth. Do you think we destroyed it? Talon asked as they made their way out of the mushroom forest. You're the one who said it was indestructible, Zelia reminded him. I expect it's disappeared back to wherever it came from to lick its wounds. The shriek of the sonic pulse still echoed around the frozen landscape, drawing a worrying rumble from the top of the snow-capped mountain. If Meki's device caused an avalanche, their escape pod would be buried, with Erasmus still inside. Without warning, the noise cut out. The power cells must have died, Meki said, puffing as they clambered up the slope to the escape pod. Fleepit muttered something, and Meki nodded. We can recover them later to use for the beacon. Of course, if you had mentioned you had a secret supply of technology. Fleepit grumbled as the accusation was left hanging in the chilly air. Erasmus was already outside as they reached the pod. What was that awful noise? He said, shivering in his shirt sleeves. Talon looked like he was going to knock the old man to the ground. Oh, sorry, did it wake you up? Talon, Zelia warned before he lost his temper. No, it's fine. I mean, it's not like we were being attacked by a Necron while he was tucked up nice and warm. Erasmus's face went as white as the snow beneath their feet. A Necron? Here? We'll explain once we're inside, Zelia said. It's freezing. And explain they did, shut inside the pod, each cupping a beaker of boiled water in their hand. I'm so sorry, Erasmus said when they'd finished their tale. Talon wasn't about to forgive him that easily. That we were nearly killed, or that you weren't there to help us? Erasmus didn't say anything, but rested his hand on the satchel beside him. Talon eyed him suspiciously. Just what have you got in there? In what? Erasmus asked innocently. In your bag. It's none of your business. Talon jumped up to confront the Lex mechanic. You're hiding something. Now Erasmus was also on his feet, jabbing a finger at Talon. Says the tunnel rat who wouldn't let us look in his precious pouch. This isn't about me, Talon said, clenching his fists. But call me that one more time and I'll show you exactly what a tunnel rat can do. Stop it, both of you, Zelia shouted, nearly throwing her beaker across the pod. Anything to shut them up. Erasmus was the first to back down. I'm sorry, it's just... He turned to look down at the bench. His satchel was gone. Where is it? He shouted, dropping on his knees to look beneath the seat. Is that what you're looking for? Asked Talon, pointing at Fleepit, who was hanging upside down from the rail on the ceiling, Erasmus's satchel in his hands. Give it back! Erasmus yelled, swiping at the ape, but Fleepit thrust his hand into the bag and pulled out a large hoop made of tarnished metal. What's that? Talon asked as Fleepit flipped down to the floor. The Jukero turned the hoop over in his hand, eyes glittering with fascination. Zelia felt something, but it wasn't fascination. It was disgust. The hoop looked big enough to be worn as a headdress and was covered in strange alien glyphs. The same symbols she'd seen emblazoned on the wings of the scythe-like fighters that had attacked Ral Rata. Is that Necron? Erasmus tried to grab the metal artifact, only for Talon to block him. I don't think so. Please, the Lex mechanic begged. Please be careful with it. Zelia held out her hand to Fleepit. Can I see? The Jukero glared at her, holding the hoop close to his hairy chest. He glanced at Meki, who nodded. The ape huffed and handed it over. Zelia couldn't suppress a shudder as she took hold of the strange object. The metal felt unnaturally cold in her hand, exactly like the Necron hunter's grip on her wrist. She ran her fingers along the symbols carved into the dull surface. Where did you get it? Erasmus sank down onto the bench. I found it at the dig.
buried in the ground. Back on Targian? He nodded, ashamed. Meki frowned. I did not see it in the catalogue. Erasmus shook his head. I didn't tell Elise. I recognised the marking. You knew what it was? Zelia asked. Where it had come from? He looked up with pleading eyes. Do you know how rare it is to find Necron artefacts? When Necrons die, their bodies vanish. When I saw the markings, I thought... His voice cracked, tears running down stubble-strewn cheeks. You thought it would make you rich, Talon said. No, Erasmus insisted, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. I thought I could take it to one of the institutes on Terra. Perhaps even the Scholastica Xenosa on Telios. I thought if I brought them something like this, they might offer me a place in their chambers. That I could study in a librarium, rather than scrabbling around in the dirt, said Talon. But you didn't tell Mum, Zelia said, her voice bitter. She would have told me to submit it to the Inquisition or destroy it. Because she knew it was dangerous. It's just a relic, he insisted. A piece of jewellery, like a crown or coronet. Do the Necrons look like they wear crowns? Talon's eyes widened as he realised the truth. That's why they attacked the Hive. That's why they came to Targian. We don't know that, the Lex mechanic said quickly. Oh, it's a coincidence, is it? You dig up some Necron junk on a dust bowl in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden the Necrons themselves decide to pay a visit. They were looking for this, Zelia said, remembering the Necron fighters carving up the wasteland. Or whatever else was under the ground, suggested Meki. And you brought it with you, yelled Talon. They came after the ships. They came after us. It's just a relic, Erasmus repeated mournfully. Talon wasn't about to let this go. If it's just a relic, then it wouldn't have been of interest to your institutes or libraries. If it's just a relic, the Necrons wouldn't have destroyed Targian. They wouldn't have blown up all those ships or sent a hunter after us. He jabbed a finger at the coronet. Everyone would still be alive. I'm sorry, Erasmus sobbed. If I had known. You should have known, Talon yelled. You're supposed to be the clever one. I didn't have much of a home, but it was where I belonged, and now it's gone. Onak, the warriors? His voice cracked with emotion. Even my mum and dad. I may have hated them, but they didn't deserve that. None of us did, and all because you took that thing. He lunged at Erasmus, and the Lex mechanic recoiled, throwing up his arms. Meki and Fleepit dived after Talon, holding him back. It's your fault, Talon screamed. Oh, your fault! Talon, stop it, Zelia told him. Stop it! The ganger broke free of the other's grip, but stayed where he was, his hands still bunched into fists as he glared at Erasmus. Oh, your fault! So, Meki asked, his voice as calm as Talon's was, choked with fury. What do we do now? We destroy it, the ganger replied. Zelia tested the hoop's strength. I doubt that's even possible, especially if it's made from the same metal as the hunter. Then we throw it away, Talon said. Chuck it into a crevasse or something. And what if the Necron finds it? Then it'll leave us alone. Everyone wins. Really? Zelia couldn't argue with that. If what you say is true, if the Necrons came to Targian looking for this crown, if they ripped the planet apart, it must be dangerous, Erasmus said, his voice haunted with guilt. What if this is part of a weapon, she asked, or something worse? Worse? Talon snorted at her. I thought you believed nothing was worse than a weapon. I do, but who knows what this thing could do in the wrong hands? In Necron hands. Talon threw out his arms in exasperation. Then we're doomed, aren't we? We can't destroy it and we can't throw it away. And if we keep it, then good news! The hunter will just keep coming. Not if we fight back. Everyone looked at Erasmus. What? Talon scoffed. Have you lost your mind? You didn't see it. It's unstoppable. You stopped it, didn't you? With Meki's sonic pulse. We have no way of knowing if it was destroyed, Meki pointed out. Yes, the Lex mechanic agreed. But what you said about the way it hopped in and out of real space, what about it? Asked Talon. Why didn't it just attack? It did, Talon insisted. No, not at first. What if it was toying with you, trying to work out if you had the crown before striking? He stood up, a fresh gleam in his eyes. But it's not the only thing that can play tricks. What are you talking about? Talon said, as the Lex mechanic looked around the pod and found the ration case. The children watched in bewilderment as he turned out the tiny packs of dried food onto the bench and held the empty case out to Zelia. It was just big enough for the crown. She hesitated and then placed it inside. Erasmus thanked her and snapped it shut. Now what? She asked. Now we get to work. Erasmus turned to Meki and Fleepit. The sound machine you built from the sonic cannon. Do you think you could make some more? Chapter 15. The Relic's Call. The Necron flexed its clawed fingers. The servos in its hands were still working, the effects of the sonic attack now past. Outwardly, the hunter stood strong in the safety of its ship, but inwardly it seethed. It knew little of organics, other than how to kill them, yet was aware of enough of their biology to know that the 3 fleshlings were nothing more than infants. It had been beaten by children. Children! The indignity burned in its core. The hunter vowed that it would make them suffer. Once it had recovered the diadem of transference, of course. That was its primary objective: locate and obtain the diadem. Only then could it have its revenge. Stalking through to the armory, the hunter assessed his weapons. The Tesla carbine had proved less than satisfying. The hunter reached out and plucked a disintegrator from its place on the rack, before drawing a hyperphase sword that had extinguished the life force of thousands of targets in its long service. The Necron still had no idea which of the humans was hiding the diadem. The crown remained silent, refusing to respond to the Necron's call. Nothing about this made sense. The diadem had been thought lost, but then had been heard across the stars. Its cry had roused the warriors of the Ketatrix in their stasis crypts, but then had fallen silent. The Astromancer had tracked its call to an insignificant planetoid the humans called Targian. The Ketatrix Night Fleet had reduced the blighted world to rubble, but the diadem had vanished. The hunter was just one of a number of death marks dispatched by Overlord Merlek to track Targian's few remaining survivors, but it was determined that it would be the one to return the diadem to the Tomb World. It would personally deliver the relic into Merlik's hands. The time for games had passed. The disintegrator couldn't harm the artifact. If one of the children was hiding the diadem in the folds of their ridiculous coats, the hunter would simply atomize them, bones and all, revealing the relic for all to see. Priming the weapon, the hunter slipped into hyperspace, leaving its ship far behind. Leaping from hyperspace to the ice planet and back again, the Necron flashed towards the infant's last known location, covering incredible distances with each bound. Before long, it was back in the forest. Night had fallen, the planet's sun dropping beneath the horizon. The forest was as silent as a tomb. With a click of its head, the hunter activated its internal sensors, searching for advanced technology. The humans must have a ship nearby. A shuttle or some kind of raft. Find that and the Necron would find its prize. Yes, there it was, a signal nearby, on the mountainside. It had them now. It leapt through hyperspace, appearing on a snowy plain at the foot of a rocky crag. It ducked behind a boulder, gazing across the frozen waste. There was a camp, huddled beneath more of the strange trees, a primitive hut sheltering against the wind. No, the hunter realized, not a hut. A life raft from the organic spaceship. The humans had erected a perimeter, the air shimmering between tall poles. A sonic fence. Foolish fleshlings, as if that would protect them. The Necron shifted forward, appearing inside the humming barrier. The pod was open, snow blowing into the hatch, but the hunter could see from here that it was empty. It looked around. There were canvas tents dotted around the camp, flimsy structures that would offer little protection against the cold. The hunter cocked its head. It could hear something. Whispered voices coming from the farthest tent. "This will never work, Zelia. Erasmus said it would. Erasmus said, this is the same Erasmus that lied through his teeth, yeah? This is all his fault. He brought the Necron artifact here." The diadem. The hunter raised its disintegrator and fired. The tent dissolved in an instant. The Necron rushed to the patch of melted snow. There was no sign of the relic. "Did you hear that? Was that a weapon?" The Necron whirled around. The voices had moved. They were behind him now. "Keep quiet, Talon!" The hunter fired again, systematically destroying each and every tent in turn. Still, there was no sign of the relic. "Get away from here, now!" Another voice, deeper, older. The hunter spun around to face its foe. A squad of Space Marines stood in front of it, their gleaming blue armour etched with the scars of 1,000 battles. But something was wrong. Why did they not raise their chainswords and attack? Why waste time on words when battle would reveal their true purpose? It was a mistake the Emperor's plaything would learn to regret. The hunter opened fire, the emerald beam slicing through the nearest warrior's chest plate. The Space Marine shimmered, but remained standing. The Necron swept its weapon along the line of warriors, cutting through the sentinels one by one. "Get away from here, now!" The Necron ceased its attack. The disintegrator beam had left no marks on the Emperor's warriors. They stood like statues, bolters and chainswords in hand, but still didn't attack. The Necron drew its sword and swept it through the two nearest Space Marines, expecting the vibrating blade to cleave through the Fleshborn's power armour. It passed through the warriors both. But where was the shriek of Necron steel against ceramite? The sword slipped through the organics as if they were ghosts. The Necron engaged its sensors, searching for the power source it already knew had to be hidden nearby. There, beneath the immobile Space Marine's boot. The hunter plunged its hand through its enemy's foot, finding the hollow projector buried in the snow. It crushed the tiny blue lens in its palm, and the Space Marines wavered before vanishing completely. They had not been real. They were hololiths. The hunter paced over to the escape pod, its sensors finding another projector wedged into a rock. The hunter brought its sword down on the device, and the escape pod disappeared. It was all a trick. A deception. "I tell you, this isn't going to work. We can't fight that thing." The hunter marched towards the last remaining tent and thrust its hand through the shelter's holographic side. It pulled out a data slate containing a Vox. A small flying robot shot out of the fake tent, taking to the air. It had been dragging the transmitter around the camp, playing with the hunter, treating it like a fool. No more. The Necron reached up, grabbing the machine in its fist, and crushed the automaton before it could escape. Twisted mesh wings tumbled to the snow. "Please, Talon," a female voice said from the Vox. "You need to be quiet. The Necron will find us." "Yes," the hunter promised. "Yes, I will." On the other side of the mountain, Zelia and the others huddled in the open hatch of the real escape pod. Zelia and Talon talked into the Vox on her sleeve, their voices transmitting to the slate the hunter now held in its hand. Meki had created the decoy using his holoprojectors, but had remained unconvinced of Erasmus's plan. They all had. But Erasmus had been proved right. The plan was working. They just needed to maneuver the hunter over the sonic mine they had hidden in the snow beneath the fake camp. "So what if he finds us?" Talon yelled into the Vox, starting to really overact. "That Necron isn't so scary. I could open him up like a tin of sludge beans." Zelia rolled her eyes at him and was about to respond when Meki cut in. "The servo sprite, it has gone." "What do you mean gone?" Zelia asked. The Martian was staring down at his wrist screen. "The data stream has been terminated. The sprite is offline." They couldn't wait any longer. Zelia turned to the Jacaro. "Flea Pit, detonate the sonic mine." Inside the pod, the ape grinned and thumbed the button. Zelia waited for a shrill whine to erupt from the other side of the mountain. They had it all planned. The sonic mine would set off an avalanche, disorientating the Necron long enough for it to be buried deep beneath the snow before it had a chance to escape. But there was no whine, and no rumble from the mountain. "Try again," she told the Jokero. The button clicked and clicked as Fleepit repeatedly jabbed at it, becoming increasingly frustrated, but still nothing happened. A voice hissed from the pod's speakers, an eerie, unnatural rasp like nails against plastic. "Your plan has failed, Fleshborn. Your sonic device crushed beneath my foot, and now I shall do the same to you." The Vox link went dead. Talon leapt up. "It didn't work. The hunt is coming for us." "We can still stop it," Zelia insisted. "With what?" They turned to the Martian. "Meki, how many sonic mines did you construct?" "2, Meki told her. "But we can make more." "By the time it gets here," Talon said. He darted into the escape pod. "What are you doing?" Zelia asked. Talon pushed Fleepit out of the way and started ransacking the inside of the escape pod. "Giving the Necron what it wants. I don't care if it's a weapon or not. If the Necron wants the crown, it can have the crown." Zelia jumped in after him. "You can't!" "Watch me." Talon dropped onto his knees to look under the bench. "Where have you stashed it, Erasmus?" He looked up from his search. "Erasmus?" There was no answer. Zelia realised she hadn't seen the Lex mechanic for a while. "Where did he go?" she asked Meki. The Martian shrugged. "He said he was going to keep watch." "I'm afraid that was a lie." "Erasmus?" The Lex mechanic's voice had come from her Vox. Zelia talked urgently into her sleeve. "Erasmus? Where are you?" Chapter 16. Facing the Enemy. On the south face of the mountain, Erasmus hugged the ration case to his chest. The wind cut through his cape, chilling him to the bone as he talked into his Vox. "It's going to be all right, Zelia. Everything is going to be just fine." "What are you doing?" Erasmus smiled. She sounded so like her mother. "I'm putting things right, as I should have done on Targaryen." With a flourish, he held the ration case above his head, shouting out across the snowy plain. "I have what you're looking for," he shouted, his voice echoing back at him. "It's here." "You've taken the coronet?" Zelia spluttered over the Vox. "I have the case," he confirmed. The wind was whistling around the mountain now, whipping up snow. A storm was coming. "What are you waiting for?" he bellowed. A shadow appeared in the snow. Erasmus could make out its angular body, sharp lines illuminated by the dull green of its disintegrator cannon and glowing eye. "There you are," he said, snowflakes clinging to the stubble on his chin. "What took you so long?" "He's gone mad," Talon said. "The idiot's going to get himself killed." "You were the one who wanted to hand over the crown," Zelia reminded him, pulling on her coat. "Where are you going?" She made for the exit. "To stop him. We can't let the relic fall back into Necron hands, not after everything that's happened." "It is not going to," said Meki, looking past her. Zelia turned to see Fleepit holding the crown in his hands as he silently communicated with the Martian. "Where did you find that?" Talon asked. "It appears that Erasmus had Fleegan Pala store it in a microdimension," Meki explained. "But if the crown is here," Zelia said, "what has Erasmus got in the case?" The spectral light of the disintegrator glowed all the brighter as it swung up to face Erasmus. The Lex mechanic smiled. He was scared, of course he was, but at least he was making amends. "Do you want to see it?" he asked the alien, trying to disguise the fear in his voice. "After all, you've been through a lot to find it." "The diadem," the Necron hissed. "Give it to me." "The diadem, eh? Is that what it's called? Fascinating. But I think you're going to be disappointed. Erasmus threw the case in front of the hunter, its lid flipping open as it hit the ground. The Necron's eye pulsed with anger. Meki's second sonic mine was nestled at the bottom of the case. "Get the diadem to Elise!" Erasmus shouted to Zelia over the box as he activated the detonator hidden in his pocket. "She'll know what to do with it!" The mine's scream echoed around the mountainside. The Necron staggered back, and Erasmus clutched his ears as the mountain itself seemed to growl. Erasmus looked up to see a tidal wave of snow rushing towards them, rocks and trees carried down the mountain in its wake. He leapt forward, shoving the pained hunter into the path of a rolling boulder. It was like trying to topple a statue. The shriek of the mine was drowned by the roar of the avalanche, and Erasmus's world turned white. "Erasmus? Erasmus, are you there? Please come in!" Zelia's voice cracked as she screamed the same question over and over again. The roar of the avalanche had drowned out the mine, and Talon ran outside to make sure that they weren't about to be buried themselves. Gradually, the night stilled, the last echoes of the landslide fading to nothing. Zelia activated the Vox and asked again, desperate to hear Erasmus's voice. Yes, he had lied to them. Yes, he had put them all in danger. But that didn't mean that she didn't care about him. He was her friend. And now he was gone. "Erasmus, please!" A hand touched her shoulder. "Zelia." She turned, half expecting to see Erasmus's lopsided smile or the spectacles permanently perched on top of his head. But it was only Talon, hesitating, not really knowing how to cope with her grief. Zelia buried her head in the ganger's chest and let the tears flow. Chapter 17. A New Dawn. Talon had left camp early the next morning, saying he was going to check to see if there was any sign of the Necron. A flurry of fresh snow had fallen overnight, covering all traces of the avalanche. Zelia found the ganger sitting on a rock, looking out over the mushroom forest. "Find anything?" she asked. He shook his head, playing with the clasp of his leather pouch. "What do you keep in there?" Zelia asked, sitting beside him. He ignored the question, and she backtracked quickly. "I mean, if you don't want to show me, that's fine. I just wondered." Talon passed the pouch to her. She took it, strangely nervous as she popped open the clasp. Inside was a small wooden toy, a guardsman, its las rifle aimed at an unknown enemy. "My brother gave it to me," Talon told her, "before he enlisted. Told me to keep it safe to remind me of him." He smiled sadly, as if I could forget. She turned the toy over in her hands before replacing it carefully in the pouch. Enlisted? He was an Imperial Guardsman, just like my dad and his dad before him. A family of soldiers. She clicked the clasp shut. "But not you." "No, not me. Let's just say I had other ideas." He took the pouch back and attached it to his belt. "Didn't want to end up fighting heretics," and he suppressed a laugh. "And aliens?" she prompted with a knowing smile. "How's that going for you?" He returned her grin. "Funny you should ask." Zelia pulled out her omniscope, snapping it open. "Activating," the cogitator announced in her mother's voice. "Guess we both carry reminders of people we love," she said. "But your mum's still out there." She frowned at him. "You mean your brother?" He shrugged. "We never heard from him again. Dad always said he was out there somewhere serving the Emperor, but I know he's gone." Talon tapped his chest. "In here." She didn't know what to say, so settled on a simple, "I'm sorry." Talon pushed himself from the rock, brushing snow from his coat. So, you're determined to do this then, he said, changing the subject. To take the diadem to your mum. Zelia let him help her up. If we can find her, yeah. First things first, we need to get off this planet, Talon pointed out. Any ideas how we're going to do that? Actually, yeah, she replied with another smile. One or two. They trudged back to the escape pod to find that Fleapit had worked more of his techno-miracles. The pod itself looked even bigger, as if the Jokero had somehow stretched it. He'd also constructed a series of posts around the camp, a real sonic fence which activated with a hum as soon as Zelia and Talon walked into the circle. They headed over to Meki, who was putting the finishing touches to a tall mast topped by a glow globe. You finished your beacon, Talon said. With a little help from a friend, Meki said, looking up as a servo sprite buzzed down from the pulsing red lamp. I thought that thing was destroyed. So did Meki, Zelia told him. Fleapit made him a new one before they started work. She reached out to stroke the Jokero's head, but the ape swatted her hand away, baring his teeth. Fine, he said quickly. Hint taken, no petting. The beacon is transmitting a distress signal on all known Imperial channels, Meki told him, as the sprite landed on his shoulder. Zelia nudged Talon in the ribs. See? We'll be off this planet before you know it. Someone's bound to pick up our signal sooner or later. Yeah, said Talon, shielding his eyes as he looked up at the flashing light. But how do we know it'll be the right someone? In the grand halls of the Inquisition, a pair of intense eyes snapped open. The man had been meditating, his devotions interrupted by a small light flashing on the stone altar that dominated his chamber. He rose from his knees and walked to the altar, pressing a button set into the stone. A hololith appeared above the granite slab, a starman with a single light pulsing in the darkness. The Imperium had received hundreds of distress calls since the fall of Targian, thousands. But there was something about this one, something that called to him across the star. This one felt different. This one felt important. Could it be the Emperor himself guiding his hand? Had his prayers finally been answered? A servo skull whirred up beside him, offering assistance, but he waved it away. He needed to concentrate. He reached into the hololithic image, opening his fingers so it zoomed into a small cluster of stars. Yes, it was there. He could feel it in his very soul. There's no need to worry, whoever you are, he said aloud, his voice deep and commanding. Salvation is on its way. The servo skull reappeared, carrying a long coat in its metal tentacles. The man smiled, the skin beneath his mask crinkling. How well you know me, Korlak. He pulled on the coat with a flourish, straightening the immaculate cuffs. Prepare my ship. We have a new mission. A rescue mission. Slipping his force sword into its scabbard, Inquisitor Jeremias strode purposely from his chambers. Galactic Compendium, Part 1. Zelia. 12-year-old Zelia is the daughter of galactic explorer Elise Law. She grew up helping Elise with archaeological expeditions on dozens of worlds, digging up ancient artifacts and alien technology. Bright and resourceful, Zelia always thinks she knows best, but isn't as experienced as she tries to make out. Sharing her mum's hatred of weaponry, Zelia believes that the best way to overcome fear is to learn about the universe. That doesn't stop her from being terrified of spiders, having been trapped in the web of a gigantic temple weaver when she was a small child. Meki. Like all Martians, Meki is happiest when tinkering with technology and is able to communicate with the machine spirits that dwell inside vehicles and cogitators. A talented inventor, 11-year-old Meki created the special robotic frame that supports his paralysed arm, as well as servo sprites, a swarm of tiny robot helpers. Even though they grew up together, Meki and Zelia have never been close. Meki prefers the company of machines to humans, and often finds it hard to make friends. He can be incredibly tough on himself, especially when things go wrong. Talon. The son of a loyal Imperial Guard officer, 13-year-old Talon ran away from home to avoid being enlisted in the military. He fell in with the Runak warriors, a feral gang who lived in the tunnels beneath Ral Rata, the largest hive city on Targia. Used to thinking with his fists, Talon finds it difficult to trust anyone, but has a good heart. Once he is on your side, you couldn't ask for a better friend. Talon has little experience of the galaxy, hiding his insecurities beneath bluster and bravado. His only link to the past is the toy soldier his older brother gave him before going off to war, a treasure he will guard with his life. Space Marines. Sworn defenders of humanity, Space Marines are the ultimate warriors, graced with superhuman speed, strength and stamina. Genetically engineered to fight in the countless wars of the 41st millennium, these towering giants have 2 hearts, 3 lungs, and blood that is immune to all known poisons. Organised into chapters, the Emperor's chainsword-wielding champions are feared and respected throughout the galaxy. Bravest of all are the heroic Ultramarines. Clad in blue and white power armour, they plunge into battle, risking all to protect the Imperium against aliens and the forces of evil. Necrons. Long ago, the galaxy lived in terror of the sinister Necrons. According to legend, these evil tyrants transplanted their twisted minds into bodies of living metal, creating immortal armies of indestructible skeletal warriors. The Necrons enslaved thousands of worlds, but were eventually defeated, forced to place themselves in suspended animation for millions of years. Now, they are rising from their secret tombs led by fearsome overlords, ready to reclaim the universe they once ruled. In battle, their sickle-winged space fighters scream through the sky, while swarms of cybernetic scarabs devour any metal in their path. Have no doubt, the Necrons are unfeeling and unstoppable. Hive worlds. There are thousands of hive worlds scattered across the Imperium. Billions of citizens live in towering, self-contained cities that reach beyond the clouds. Sadly, most hive occupants never see the sun or breathe the polluted air of their world. A hive is made up of various levels. The spires, where the richest and the most powerful citizens live in luxury. Life in the 41st millennium doesn't get much better than this. Unless the Necrons send the entire hive crashing to the ground, of course. The upper hive, home to the nobles, bureaucrats and manufactorum owners who rule the colossal cities in the Emperor's name. The lower hive. Most of the population lives in the lower hive, scratching a meagre existence in filthy manufactorum. Every day is a grind, with barely any food and no respite from toil. Lower hivers live to work, nothing more. The underhive. If you thought life in the lower hive was tough, nothing will prepare you for the underhive. Home to the poorest citizens, every day is a fight to survive. Vicious gangs rule the labyrinthine tunnels and sewers, locked in a never-ending turf war. The outskirts. Only the bravest or most desperate souls choose to live in the poisonous wastes that surround the hive. Dangerous animals stalk the toxic landscape where no crops can grow.